Let's kick it off. It's 6 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Wednesday, March 26th. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights, hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Congratulations. You're waking up in the greatest country in history. Donald Trump's your president. We got a whole show planned for you of engaging conversations, critical analysis, but most importantly, and unlike any other show in the Denver metro area, your phone calls and texts, because this is where Denver's voice is heard from the right, from the left, and the center. So phone lines open 303-696-1971 or text us on the Dan Caplis Law Text line 720-819-5115, 720-819-5115. A wild day yesterday on Capitol Hill as the intelligence chiefs were before a Senate Intelligence Committee, and we played clips from some of it yesterday. We're going to cover that this morning. We want to hear your phone calls. What happened in this signal text fiasco? Was this an accidental text inclusion? You added somebody, just didn't realize it? Mike Waltz messed up there? Was there something more nefarious going on? Mike Waltz went on Laura Ingraham yesterday. We got that audio. We're going to get to that a little bit later. But, I mean, the Democrats coming out in force. Michael Bennett laying into the CIA director, John Ratcliffe. We got that audio. So all of this coming up. You're not going to want to miss this conversation. Want you to be a part of it. Then in the 8 o'clock hour, I got Dan Snowberger and Jeff Maher in from the Elizabeth School District. You heard about this story. This is wild. They had a series of books that were awful, deemed pornographic. And in fact, if I read one of the excerpts of these books, I would lose my job here. But the ACLU coming after them, saying that they can't pull these books out. Judge siding initially with the ACLU, ordering the superintendent to put the books back in the school libraries. Where's this case going? And where do the rights of free speech line up with parental rights not to have smut in their kids' libraries? We're going to get into that in the 8 o'clock hour, and then in the 9 o'clock hour, you saw all these deportations, right, that took place. President putting these Venezuelan gang members on airplanes and flying them out. Well, lawsuits there as to whether or not they were all actually members of Venezuelan gangs. And we're going to talk with John Koufos, a former gang attorney, later in the 9 o'clock hour. So it's an absolutely fire show. We want you guys to be a part of it. Again, the phone line's 303-696-1971 or text us on the Dan Caplis Law Text line 720-819-5115. Now is time for your morning dose of Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Morning, it's hump day, 40 and clear in Denver, expecting a high of 75 today. Yes, spring has sprung. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story, the intelligence crew preparing for yet another day of grilling on Capitol Hill, as Jeff just talked about. Jeffery Goldberg from The Atlantic says that he was included in that group chat that discussed plans to strike Houthi targets. Who's to blame? Who's a good guy? Who's a bad guy? Is it Mike Waltz, Goldberg? Just a simple mistake, inside job. Democrats went after Tulsi Gabbard, Kash Patel, and CIA Director John Ratcliffe. Here's Tulsi.
There was no classified material that was shared in that.
So then if there was no classified material, share it with the committee. You can't have it both ways. These are important jobs. This is our national security.
The left making the most of it, doing whatever they can do with this story. Goldberg is slime, though. And 13 years ago, he called Alex Jones and wanted to do a story on him. Goldberg flew to Austin.
We want to know who you work for. And I'm like, what do you mean? I just studied politics in the world. I'm a popular show. He goes, well, the administration, others want to know if you're dangerous. They were trying to figure out who you work for. I knew what he was doing when it happened. I talked about it days after. I said, that guy's a Mossad or CIA, probably both. And now I know a lot more how this stuff works. The real spies are in it all. That's why you got CIA, Mossad, all of it with JFK. It's all just tentacles, heads of the Hydra.
So Jones believes he's Mossad or CIA. Hey, anything's possible. Not a stretch to me. Remember a few years ago, Tucker Carlson's signal was hacked by NSA.
And so I was intimidated. I'm embarrassed to admit, but I was completely freaked out by it. I called a U.S. Senator who I know, not that well, but it seems like a trustworthy person. And I told him the story. I said, I just want to tell you this. And then I went on TV on Monday and I'm like, this happened. Congress asked NSA and NSA is like, yes, we did this, but for good reason. What would be a good reason to read what? But the head of NSA, it's fine. Because everyone's in on it. Republicans and Democrats are all in on it. And by it, I mean the assumption there's no privacy whatsoever, that they have a right to know everything you're saying and thinking. But again, if you have no privacy, you have no freedom.
And I always expect the worst. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem is in El Salvador today. She'll tour the famous El Salvadoran prison called the Terrorist Confinement Center that took in hundreds of U.S. deportees. Noem will also meet with President Bukele. Ukraine and Russia are agreeing to a limited ceasefire deal, and beginning tomorrow, the Social Security Administration will withhold 100% of any overpayments made to recipients. Denver police investigating after a shooting sent one person to the hospital last night. It happened in the 2300 block of Welton in 5 Points. Officers ordered a shelter in place for the area as they attempted to contact an involved party in the shooting. Investigators are looking into the cause of the fire at the abandoned sugar factory in Longmont on Tuesday. Firefighters were unable to work on the two-story building due to hazardous materials inside and unfavorable weather conditions. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett continues her dramatic tour on stage. Tuesday at the Human Rights Campaign, she made a joke about Texas Governor Greg Abbott, who's in a wheelchair.
Thank you so much, Morgan, because we in these hot-ass Texas streets, honey. Y'all know we got Governor Hot Wheels down there. Come on now. And the only thing hot about him is that he is a hot-ass mess, honey. So yes.
Wow.
Right, okay. All right, I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on.
Girl is just sliding down the drain. Scott Jennings on CNN.
Yeah, and she tried to walk it back and obviously forgot about her previous commentary using that exact same insult. I don't know how the Democrats came to appoint Jasmine Crockett as the unquestioned leader of your party, but thank God. And I think what she should do is go on TV twice as much as she is right now, maybe 3 times as much, because every time she appears and makes one of these mistakes, says something radical, it only further divides her party from the rest of the other 80% of America who can't stand this.
And earlier in the day, she went after a reporter and his camera, scratched him, and he has filed charges.
Congresswoman Crockett, you were recently on a Tesla takedown call calling for violence on the 29th. Would you like to clarify your comments?
As you can see.
Congresswoman, will you condone violence at the Tesla?
And there it happened. She has long fingernails and eyelashes and a whole lot of makeup. And we can talk about that hair later. FBI whistleblower Kyle Seraphin on InfoWars, 14 terabytes of evidence in the Epstein case distributed to FBI offices. They are aggressively working on it.
I just listen to what people say, and then I go and see if folks can actually validate that. I've got friends that are working at headquarters. I got a couple of them at this point. They are friends of mine. It turns out when you become an FBI whistleblower, less and less people talk to you. They just don't want to get involved. But a few of them that are not scared, that are courageous and said they'd be happy to like both lose their job and shut this agency down if it had to be done. They've gone out and proactively told me, he's like, look, we've broken servers. We've had so many people accessing them to do this work. The people that we're talking about here, they've reached out to me and said, yeah, we have all hands on deck. I meant to go do something because he was going to go meet one of my friends, wasn't able to do so. And he's like, look, dude, I got stuff going on. I can't because we have all hands on deck meetings talking about Epstein files. We are doing the redactions. We are doing the things that were said.
That's great news. News brought to you by Lair Fireplace and Patio, Denver's premier source for everything fireplace, patio, and grills. Locally owned and operated since 1954. Online at lairfireplacepatio.com. Nuggets play host to the Bucks tonight, and the Avs over the Red Wings 5-2. 39 in Centennial, 38 in Arvada, 40 in Denver. Jeff and Billy just underway.
They're like a boa constrictor. They're like a python.
Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Beautiful. Early spring weather for Denver. Enjoy. We'll be low to mid-70s and sunny today. Lower 40s tonight, sunny. Well into the 70s on Thursday. Lows at night 40s. Friday still making the 70s. Now Friday will bring a few afternoon showers and isolated thunderstorms. A better chance of showers, of rain, and thunder Saturday than a chance of rain and snow Saturday night, Sunday, and much colder. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center. Beautiful. Early spring weather for Denver. Enjoy.
I want to talk to you about my good friend Dan Kaplis with Dan Kaplis Law. I've known Dan for well over a decade. Pro-life, pro-family, pro-faith, pro-America. That matters because who you choose to represent you in an injury case says a lot about you to everybody involved in the case, right? You're going into battle. You got to fight to get what's yours after an accident's taken place. And you want to show up with somebody that has a stellar reputation. Dan Kaplis, 40 years helping people who are hurt in serious motor vehicle crashes. Everybody in this town respects him. And more than that, he's a real winner in the courtroom. Dan is believed to be the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. Dan is also believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado history. Dan Kaplis Law is so trusted that he's the official law firm partner of the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche. Dan Kaplis Law, a serious firm for serious cases. Dan accepts righteous injury cases on a percentage fee basis so that he can represent good people from all walks of life without regard to ability to pay. So if you need Dan's help, here's his phone number, 303-770-5551. That's 303-770-5551, or hit dankaplislaw.com. That's Dan, C-A-P-L-I-S law.com. All right, so yesterday, lots of fireworks. We carried a portion of it on our show here today. You had four intelligence chiefs in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee yesterday. And it just happened that the day before, and I put happened out there in air quotes, It just happened that the day before this regularly scheduled Senate Intelligence Committee, where there was going to be a review of the top threats facing America, this article comes out from The Atlantic. Jeffery Goldberg, the editor, senior editor of The Atlantic, says that he was put on a group chat on Signal, which is a messaging app. It's an encrypted messaging app that included essentially our nation's leaders discussing an attack taking place in Yemen against the Houthis, which is a terrorist organization. And they're kind of debating policy, all that stuff. Some of the plans were released. Well, that article comes out the day before this regularly scheduled Senate Intelligence Committee. And as you can imagine, the Senate Democrats focused entirely on this yesterday. Senate Republicans focusing on the report that Tulsi Gabbard actually had to prepare and release, which listed out the top threats, including fentanyl, which is actually a news story that drugs are now listed as top national security threats to America. We'll get to that a little bit later. But the audio, the fights, the debates taking place in the Senate was worthy of WWE. So this is Mark Warner. Mark's the Senate Intelligence ranking member, so the top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee. This is him and Tulsi Gabbard, John Ratcliffe, Kash Patel yesterday.
I want to go back to what I addressed at the outset. I mean, this was not only sloppy, it not only violated all procedures, but if this information had gotten out, American lives could have been lost. The Houthis had this information, could reposition their defensive systems. So I want to get a little more information about this. Director Gabbard, did you participate in the group chat with Secretary of Defense and other Trump senior officials discussing the Yemen war plans?
Senator, I don't want to get into the specifics.
Ma'am, were you on? You're not going to be willing to address. So you're not, are you denying? Matt, will you answer my question, ma'am? You were not TG on this group chat?
I'm not going to get into the specifics.
So you refuse to acknowledge whether you were on this group chat?
Senator, I'm not going to get into the specifics.
Why are you going to get into the specifics? Is it because it's all classified?
Because this is currently under review by the National Security
Because
Council.
it's all classified? If it's not classified, share the text now.
As the White House previously
Is it classified or non-classified information on this text?
I can confirm.
Director Radcliffe, were you on the group chat?
Senator, I was on a Signal messaging group.
So you were the John Ratcliffe on that chat?
I was.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I provide some context, Senator, to that?
Yes, but I've got a series of questions.
Well, but I think it's important because at the outset you made a couple of comments about Signal messaging using encrypted apps. So that we're clear, one of the first things that happened when I was confirmed as CIA director was Signal was loaded onto my computer at the CIA, as it is for most CIA officers. One of the things that I was briefed on very early, Senator, was by the CIA records management folks about the use of Signal as a permissible work use. It is. That is a practice that preceded the current administration to the Biden administration.
Director Ratcliffe, I've got a series of questions. If you're making the statement, the Signal is a secure channel.
No, can I answer that? It is.
I've got a series of
encryption. So
it is.
finish,
I understand encryption.
It is permissible to use to communicate and coordinate for work purposes, provided, Senator, that any decisions that are made are also recorded through formal channels. Right. So those were procedures that were implemented. My staff implemented those processes, followed those processes, complied with those processes, and finally, just please. So my communications, to be clear, in a Signal message group were entirely permissible and lawful and did not include classified information.
That's John Ratcliffe with the Senate. Oh gosh, I'm forgetting the actual title now. All of a sudden, that the top Democrat essentially on the Senate Intelligence Committee,
ranking member, or something. They always got something weird. I think they should have to wear a hat.
I was up late.
If they're the ranking
Stephen
member,
Tubbs
they should need a hat. They should have to wear a hat so you can identify them. I just think there aren't enough cool hats. Okay, sorry, I'm just a little distracted.
So I thought John Ratcliffe, first of all, did a fantastic job clearing up that Signal is allowed to be used by the CIA leadership, by agents and folks like that. It just has to, other decision making that takes place has to follow some of the other rules. But the idea that this was some big scandal that the CIA was using Signal, he cleared that up pretty well. But where I found there was a little entertaining was Tulsi Gabbard refusing to answer, and then the guy next to her goes, "Yeah, that's me." So she deflects and goes, "Well, there's a current investigation going on. So you're not TG. Current investigation going on." John Ratcliffe, are you on the text message thread? Yep. Could you imagine getting pulled before the principal and they're like, "All right, we got a text message thread. It says JH and BT. Bill Thorpe, is this? Are you
No.
BT?
No.
We're currently under investigation. Okay.
Can't talk about that.
Are you JH, Jeff? Yep.
I'm glad you picked up on that, because there were moments in which I sat there and I'm like, this is the most awkward twosome ever, because y'all haven't talked.
That's what I was thinking too.
Nobody got their story straight.
Right.
It's the idea. Okay. We've all been there where maybe you've been doing something you should have been when you're in your teenage years, and the red and blue start flashing behind you, and everybody in the crowd's like, okay. This is our story.
Yeah, right.
You have to get the story straight, and they didn't have their story straight.
Well, it reminds me, I had heard this in college, that there was the story of a group of kids that stayed out late for spring break and missed one of their major exams. And so they came up with a story that they got a flat tire.
Oh, okay.
And as they got back to school, the story guys, we got the flat tire. We couldn't make the exam even though they were hungover. So they show up to retake the exam. Professor puts them in separate rooms and hands them a single sheet of paper. And it just says, "Which tire?"
Oh, that's good. That's really good.
Get your story straight,
Get your story
guys.
straight. Yes,
But,
absolutely.
I mean, did you find John Ratcliffe's answer? I thought it cleared up a lot with regards to Signal, because a lot of the discussion early on when this story broke was, why is the CIA allowed to use Signal? Well, he said it was installed on his phone when he got there. It's permissible. He followed the rules and the processes, and so long as the decision-making apparatus is also detailed in classified documents, the discussion that takes place on Signal is acceptable.
Is it? Is it? And that's an interesting question, because there was something I caught during our show yesterday when Mark Kelly was doing some questioning. And there was something interesting that I caught that I didn't hear anybody else in mainstream media catch this. And I kept hearing the thing about no classified information, no classified information, no classified information over and over and over again. There was no classified information discussed, but nobody, let me see if I can bring this up, remembered this exchange between Ratcliffe and Mark Kelly. I think he starts with Gabbard, though. Let me see if I can pull this up.
The deliberation as to whether or not we should launch a strike on another country, would you consider that classified information, Ms. Gabbard?
Well, the information was not classified.
This is not, I'm not talking about this. I'm just talking about deliberation from principals as to whether or not we should launch a strike on another country. Would you consider that classified information? I'm not talking about what happened this week.
There are other factors that would go into determining that classification.
Mr. Ratcliffe, the deliberation between principals in our national security apparatus about whether or not to strike another country, would you consider that to be classified information?
Pre-decisional strike deliberation should be conducted through classified channels.
That's important. And so what he's saying there is deliberations about whether or not we strike should be done through classified channels. Signal is not a classified channel. So they may not have shared technically classified information, but Ratcliffe there outlines this is a conversation that cannot, should not, and never have taken place on Signal because it is not a classified channel of communication. Nobody got that. I was surprised yesterday. And I'm looking for the libs. I'm out there on the Mother Joneses. I'm out there, I'm looking at Midas Touch. I'm out there looking for the people. I'm like, does anybody hear this? And it was something that I just remembered in passing on our show yesterday and went, wait.
Well, I wonder
while it's not classified.
What
process
pinged me, and that was pre-deliberation discussion. So kind of extrapolate that out, because if I have a conversation with the president of the United States and I'm like, man, we really got to go after Iran, is that considered a pre-deliberation strike conversation, or is a pre-deliberation strike conversation, we need to hit this particular spot? Like we need to go after this power company, for instance. So what falls under that category? How broad is that category?
Yeah, and I would say that if you think that the first part of the conversation that you outlined is classified and is pre-deliberation, easy for me to say, can I buy a vowel, please, Pat, so I can spin the wheel, that if that qualifies, then absolutely the technical aspects of it, who, when, where, why, what are we using, that should qualify for something that should not be done or discussed on a non-classified channel. And that's pretty much, from my interpretation, that's what Ratcliffe is saying. I'm not arguing whether or not the information was classified, but the actions should have been discussed on a classified channel. And I am surprised how many lazy-ass journalists missed this. So many of you out there ran with the line. They said it wasn't classified. They wasn't really classified. Yeah, but Ratcliffe outlines there, this is a conversation that needed to take place on classified systems, not on Signal. That's important. Yeah, it's interesting.
All right, we're discussing this text Signal debate fiasco. I would love to hear from you. Phone lines are open, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line, 720-819-5115. How big of a scandal is this? I mean, do you look at this the way a lot of other conservatives look at what happened under the Biden administration, for instance? You had a brain-dead president for 4 years. You had a fiasco in Afghanistan when it comes to the withdrawal. 13 U.S. troops died. You never saw calls for resignation happen after that. Give me a break, you pearl-clutching libs.
And I got a question.
Is this a real, actual scandal that needs to result in resignation?
Anybody agrees with the writings of Bill Kristol yesterday, who says, is it actually a scandal if nothing happens?
Yeah.
Does it then cease to be a scandal?
Because there was no actual...
Nothing. No fallout, no anything else.
Right.
Yeah. If nothing happens because of it, does it invalidate that as a scandal?
Bill
Can you not have a
Kristol
scandal?
said that?
Yeah, he wrote it yesterday. Yeah.
That surprises me.
I know.
thought you would take any effort to call for the president's resignation.
That's why I wrote it down yesterday. I went, that's weird.
Yeah, right. Did Donald Trump wake up?
Yeah.
Resign!
Exactly. I was like, that surprised me when I ran across that. I was like, oh, that's an interesting statement. So that's why I brought it to the table. Yeah.
303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line, 720-819-5115. Guess where I'm going for lunch after the show, Bill?
Oh, is it your favorite place in Denver?
Black Eyed Pea. A good buddy of mine that we were roommates in college, is a police officer here in town. He said, hey, I saw your video.
Yeah.
Dude, I've had people show up out of my life that I haven't talked to in years.
That is fantastic.
But I got a text message from him. Hey, let's catch up. I said, I got a great restaurant. So heading over there to my friends at the Black Eyed Pea of Colorado. They're locally owned and operated by Steve and Michelle. I love this restaurant. It's home-style cooking, worth going out for. With 8 locations, there's sure to be one near you. When's the last time you took the family to eat at the Black Eyed Pea? Everything is made from scratch. Roasted turkey breast, dinner, mom's meatloaf, that's what I get, grilled salmon. How about homemade soups, great salads, and delicious mashed potatoes? They've got daily specials, they've got senior discounts, and better save room for dessert at the Black Eyed Pea. They have the mile-high 1-pound chocolate cake. What I do when I take the kids there, we get one big piece, because this is a big piece. You get a big piece of that. Everybody dives into it. It's incredible. Make your dinner party, rehearsal dinner, wedding reception, or company event a success with Black Eyed Pea Catering. And no matter what the occasion, the Black Eyed Pea gift cards are always great. So whether you purchase them for your spouse, birthday favors, or holiday presents, they have you covered. I love everything about this restaurant, and I know you will as well. Keep it in Colorado and visit the Black Eyed Pea near you. All right, we'll continue with the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS. Is this a scandal?
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. We're talking the Signal scandal. But is it a scandal?
Yeah, is it? Is anything going to happen?
Well, nobody died. The operation didn't change.
No, because they brought the information out post-op, which is what should be done. It's absolutely what Goldberg should have done. Yeah, that was correct.
What Goldberg should have done is notify the people early on that there's a journalist here.
No, he shouldn't have.
Yes, he had a responsibility. He doesn't have access to this stuff. He shouldn't be watching this.
No, he did
listening to this conversation.
He did exactly what he was supposed to, because if you listen to the interviews that he's done, if you look at the writings that he's done, he didn't know if this was real. He thought this is, and his first blush is, I get invited to this. This can't possibly be legit. This has to be foreign actors trying to trick me. This has to be foreign actors trying to feed me a story.
So why didn't he leave it himself?
Because let's consider what he says. This has to be foreign actors trying to lead me down a line. What are they trying to feed me? What story are they trying to get me to report? He was curious. He was convinced this was BS until the attack lined up with the timeline that he was given.
Why?
As soon as that happened, he left the chat.
So let's say that's his story, okay? Why make an article out of it? Why does this have to be reported? Why couldn't he just notify the White House and go, guys, you accidentally put me on this list. Figure out a better way to do this moving forward.
He did afterwards. He went ahead and he
and then wrote an article about it.
Yeah, as well. It should. He's a journalist. He was included, and this is a mess up. If this happened under the Biden administration, and something like this happened, and you had a journalist from Fox News or somewhere else or ABC included on a similar chat.
Because I'm not a journalist.
Hang on,
I'm an activist.
I know.
Jeffrey Goldberg is an activist too.
No, he's not. He's a journalist.
Oh,
I mean, you can again.
He's the guy that said that the liars and suckers.
Hang on.
Stuff from Trump.
Either way, if a reporter from Newsmax, OAN, Fox News, ABC, MSNBC, Breitbart was included in a Joe Biden era conversation like this, it'd be the same thing. You got to figure out if it's real, and then afterwards you ask the questions, and then you write the story about it.
Oh,
yes,
yeah, write the story. You just throw that out there.
Yes, you do, because otherwise it's a cover-up,
if this is such a national security issue and such a controversy, why would you write a story about it? Why wouldn't you just notify the folks at the White House and you made a mistake, you guys got to figure it out. And the White House would go, thanks for letting us know. And nobody needs to know. Why does the world need to know about this?
Wait.
Unless you want to tank the administration.
He said this happened, and again, he is anti-Trump. That's okay, and that's another question as far as why he was even included or ever involved in this conversation. That is a decent question, and now the administration is floating the idea that he's some sort of computer genius and was able to hack into the signal. That's complete crap. But he did, based on what a journalist is outlined to do, he did exactly what he was supposed to. He did.
He didn't have to write the story.
No.
Why did he have to write the story?
Because it is interest to the public. It's about the administration, what's going on, and it is.
Come on.
Yes.
Go on. Well, here's Trump yesterday being interviewed about it.
It would have been called a cover-up if it was anything else.
It could not be a cover. It was a mistake made.
Yes, it was.
And he could have just notified them. He wanted to score points.
Example: if someone inside the Biden administration, a journalist, was accidentally invited into a cabinet meeting, and Joe Biden obviously is slipping mentally. He's obviously not there. And that journalist is like, nope, not going to write the story. The argument would be that's a cover-up.
That's different.
No, the argument would be it's a cover-up.
This is totally different. All right, well, here's
the
Trump.
issue is having access to the information, verifying it's true, and then deciding not to write the story. That's what you want to do. You just don't want him to write the story. He should be able to write the story, and he should.
Here's the president yesterday.
There was no classified information, as I understand it. They used a app, if you want to call it an app, that a lot of people use, a lot of people in government use, a lot of people in the media use. And I think I'll ask Mike. Mike is here. Do you want to respond to that, please?
Yes, Mr. President. You asked about lessons. I think there's a lot of journalists in this city who have made big names for themselves, making up lies about this president, whether it's the Russia hoax or making up lies about Gold Star families. And this one in particular, I've never met, don't know, never communicated with, and we are looking into and reviewing how the heck he got into this room.
Atlantic is a failed magazine. does very, very poorly. Nobody gives a damn about it. This gives it a little bit of a shot. And I will tell you this, that they've made up more stories, and they're just a failing magazine. The public understands that. He's a very good man. That man is a very good man right there that you criticize so strongly. He's a very good man, and he will continue to do a good job.
So Jeffery Goldberg is the same person that published the losers and suckers claim, which was debunked by just pretty much everybody that was there, including those that don't like the president, like John Bolton. If you remember that, the one that said Trump said Americans who died in war are losers and suckers. That never took place. This is the same guy. So there's no reason for this guy at all to be on Mike Waltz's contact list. So how he ended up in Signal is a discussion. We'll get into that a little bit later. But not a good guy. Knew that he probably shouldn't have been on this Signal chat, and ends up writing an entire article about it instead of notifying the White House that at any point, he could have raised his hands and said, guys, I'm not sure I should be on this. But this guy who has a track record of making stuff up about Donald Trump now gets on this thread, doesn't notify him that he's on there, not sure why he's on there, listens to this entire conversation, then could have notified the White House and said, guys, you're clearly having an important national security conversation. I'm not sure I'm supposed to be a part of this. Or why am I here, guys? What's going on? Instead, waits till the conversation takes place, the strikes take place, and then runs out there and writes an entire article specifically to harm the Trump administration, in my opinion.
See, I think you're ascribing a lot of motivations there that may not be true. But again, the idea, though, is he did exactly what he should have as a journalist. He took in information. He was invited into a group that he didn't know was real or not. He watched. He observed. He took in information and verified the information. And once he had verification that this was a legit chat, he left the chat. And then he did his due diligence and reached out to members of the administration to confirm it was real. That's exactly what a journalist is supposed to do. He didn't interject himself into the conversation. He didn't participate. He observed, he recorded, watched, and then when he had verification that, yes, what they're talking about actually occurred and he knew it was legit chat, he left immediately and then tried to verify a second time whether or not this was true, and the administration verified it was a legit chat. That is exactly what you are supposed to do. That is exactly what you were taught in journalism school. You watch, you observe, you record, you verify, and then you verify again, and then you report the story. That is exactly what you do.
So I want to hear from folks. Do you see this as a hit piece against the president? Or do you see this as honest journalism? Let's go to the phones. Jeff in Golden. Good morning, Jeff. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Morning.
Good morning, guys. Yeah, there's a couple things, I guess. One thing, if he was, maybe they do include journalists in something like this, and maybe it was to write the story. I didn't read the story that the guy wrote. But did he write anything to say that it was a successful mission and describe the mission? And in my opinion, maybe a journalist would have written that too and took the ball all the way to the end zone and said, okay, this is how it went. And it was a success from what I gathered. I think it was a success. But I don't think the guy wrote the article about the success of the mission. And then number two, I thought about it myself, like, and maybe you guys could think too, it's your work. Let's say for some reason, because I'm sure the company you work for, I don't know if you work for a larger corporation, but I do. And you know what I mean? Like sometimes if you were to get an email or a text, about the $10 million that we need to, get over to, Biloxi, Mississippi or something you definitely, it's obviously not intended for you. How would you have handled it at your own work? Maybe, I'm not a journalist, but I'm a person.
We have to go through phishing training and electronic espionage training here as far as Salem Media. And we get routine, both real and fake emails, attacks. Yeah. And what you're supposed to do is observe the email. You're supposed to try to verify the email. And there are a variety of things you do that. And then you report the email, which is exactly what Goldberg did. observed the conversation, verified the conversation was real,
and then go write a blog post about it,
and then report the conversation
outside so that the competitors can see what's happening.
But again,
I think the vast majority of people see the guy sitting in the weeds, though. Like you literally do. It just seems like you see a guy over, in the shadows, just like, yeah. Ooh,
well,
one more. You know what I mean? Like that.
Jeff, that's
that just
a wonderful
seems...
question. Why in the hell didn't anybody on the Signal chat look at who was on the Signal chat? You can verify who's in the loop. I don't know how it is on Signal. I'm not on Signal, but if you're in a normal text message, you click on the little thing that has the icons at the top. It gives you a list of who's involved.
Well,
and I'm assuming Signal does something
there's
similar.
Blame to go there.
Why didn't they find
assumed that everybody on there was supposed to be on there. I
know,
get that.
But nobody
they probably
checked the
were,
list.
and then they said
Jeffery
they went to a
Goldberg.
high side, right? What is this high side? Then they said after
high side
it
is a
got
classified side
to
of
a certain
things.
level, then they go to a high side channel, which he wasn't on, right?
Yeah, no, he wasn't. And the idea...
Okay, so then what's the problem?
What he's doing is, and the reason being is that Goldberg outlines that inside of the Signal chat, which is unsecured, they discussed target acquisition, who was going to be killed, what was going to be used to kill him, timeline of the kill, and that is, according to what we heard from Ratcliffe, the CIA director, those type of plans should be done on classified channels.
But he also said that this wasn't classified. He specifically said that.
That's why Goldberg is going to publish the text of the conversations.
Right.
Yes.
And I'm looking at them right now. The Atlantic just put them out, by the way. If you go to Atlantic on X, you can see that. But it's like at 14:10, more F-18s launch. 12:15, F-18s launch. 14:10. More F-18s launch. I'm not saying this is the coordinates of where the strike's going to take place. That didn't happen in this list. But
they didn't say where they're leaving from. They're leaving from this aircraft carrier at these coordinates. Yeah, so that seems pretty vague information.
Jeff,
I don't know.
great call. I appreciate it. Jeff's line will be open
303-696-1971.
We got You Choose the News coming up. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader News Talk 710 KNUS.
All right, Billy. Let's give the people what they want. A little You Choose the News.
Yes, it is that time of the morning where we get to be a little bit silly. It's You Choose the News. You know how this works. Scour the interwebs. Really silly stories, dumb headlines, nobody's paying attention. Blake Olson is joining us from the news department, and shh, this is a giant secret. And Jeff Hunt in the studio. Gentlemen, here are your headlines today. Headline number 1. Just testing. Headline number 2, biology education. Headline number 3, Lars Ulrich was right. And headline number 4, like a classic of English literature.
Testing, just testing.
Just testing. Yes, just testing. A 31-year-old father who was caught trying to record his 9-year-old child while she was changing into a bathing suit says it was just a test. He wanted to find out whether or not he was really a pedophile. He was arrested by Saskatoon provincial authorities and is facing charges because of this. The child noticed the phone set up next to a plant in the room and found video on the phone of dad setting it up. And when questioned by the authorities, he said, I just wanted to see if I really like to see young kids naked, including my own, which is creepy and disgusting on its own level. Yes. The idea that he decided I'm going to test to see if it...
Yeah, that's not going to work.
No, I don't think it's going to work.
Straight to jail.
I was just testing to see if I'm a drug addict. Just testing to see if I'm a criminal. Just testing to see if I'm a rapist. That's just not going to go over well. I can't figure out a time in which that's going to work. All right, Blake Olson. Biology education, Lars Ulrich was right, or like classic of English literature?
Let's go with biology education.
We keep scraping the bottom of the barrel here. Phoenix is where we find ourselves. A teacher at a Phoenix area elementary school is now facing charges after he allegedly urinated into a can in front of his class, exposing himself in the process. Authorities say the 6th grade teacher, 52-year-old Kurt Hinton, is facing 4 counts of indecent exposure. According to paperwork, 3 of his students went to the principal's office and said he peed in a cup in class. And the teacher says, yes, I did, but I didn't think the kids could see me behind the desk. But yeah, I peed into a cup during class, and I didn't think the kids could. Again, and that's a teacher.
We make bathrooms.
I know.
And we don't need the 10 Commandments on the wall.
I'm not sure one of the 10 Commandments says, thou should not show you my pee-pee. I don't think that's one of them. All right, Jeff Hunt, final choice, sir. Lars Ulrich was right, or like a classic of English literature?
Like classic literature.
Like a classic of English literature, Florida has been worried about what's going to happen if they deport all the illegals. Well, the solution is children. They are now floating a state bill that would allow children to avoid child labor laws, including allowing children as young as 14 to work overnight shifts while in school. That's going to help out. Yeah.
I guess it's better than staring at your phone. Get those kids to work. All right.
Get them into the mines. We need dwarfs.
We've got full phone lines. We'll get to this continued signal scandal. You're not going to want to miss it. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk station, News Talk 710 KNUS.
It's 7 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Tuesday, March 26, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center. We've got an entire hour. We're going to dive into the signal issue again. We're going to give you Michael Bennett's questioning that happened yesterday. Mike Waltz's response that took place with Laura Ingraham last night. Wild. How big of a scandal is this for you? Is it much to do about nothing? I mean, at least 13 people didn't die in a bombing in Afghanistan like happened under the Biden administration. I don't remember Hakeem Jeffries, Elizabeth Warren calling for any resignations then. But
So, but one of the things that nobody talks about, remember, you get an invite first. There was two contacts with this Goldberg guy. He got an invite first, and then to come in on it. So, in other words, and nobody's addressing that. And I also think that one of the things that Trump should be looking at, what member on his staff or the cabinet has the Atlantic editor's number?
Yeah, and
that's a good question.
This is where I think I'm looking at the text message that had just been released by the entire conversation has been released by the Atlantic. It starts with Alex Wong. So my deputy, Alex Wong, is pulling together a tiger team of deputies, agency chief of staff level, following up from the meeting in the sit room this morning for action items, and we'll be sending that out later this evening. Now, I went and looked at Alex Wong's background. It's a long storied career in intelligence. He served as chief foreign and legal policy director for the Mitt Romney 2012 presidential campaign. So he's been in these circles for a long time. And he, being the fact that Jeffery Goldberg has written a lot about foreign policy, primarily as it relates to Israel, I'm guessing he was in Wong's contact database, and that's probably where this happened. That's my guess.
You think that's why he has Goldberg's number?
I think that's probably where it happened.
Yeah, because it wouldn't be unusual to, for someone that is involved in intelligence to have conversations or at least know the editor of The Atlantic, especially when Goldberg writes a lot about international relations, international security. It wouldn't necessarily be unusual.
And Mary, you know how I feel about Kyle Clark. I have his cell phone in my phone.
Okay.
So
you're the lead.
We talk. Right?
Yes, he is.
Yeah. And I joked the other day that I was inviting Kyle Clark onto my Signal chat with my wife, which my wife then laughed and said, "What Signal?" Because she doesn't use it. But and then Lauren Boebert responded saying, "I'd like to be on that chat." I think I'm going to ask Grok to put together a little fake chat between me and Lauren Boebert.
But I do feel that if they had, this would not have been what it is now, going on third or fourth day, if they just went ahead and acknowledged, "Hey, we messed up."
Yeah, I agree.
It's not going to happen again. We'll tighten up the procedures. There was no confidential information that got out. It is all right. I mean, I love that explanation of how Signal works, but I just think that this would not be what it is now if they just instead of not answering and being forthwith with the right, with the answers.
Here's the interesting thing about that, Mary, is I believe it was a day or two before the story drops. So it's after based on the timeline, it's after Jeffery Goldberg of The Atlantic reaches out to the administration and tries to verify this chat. Is this legit? And he gets verification from various members of the administration that, yes, this is a legit chat. Between that time frame and when the story drops, the Pentagon, the DOD, releases a press release that says to all employees, do not use Signal for conversations. Basically outlining this is not what you do. There are certain things you can do in Signal, but the conversation that was being held that Jeffrey Goldberg reports on would not be allowed under the new guidelines. So it's interesting that while they are not saying a mistake took place, there have been a change in policy and procedure outlined by the Department of Defense.
Yeah, because now the whole world knows they use Signal.
No, but it is after. It's pre Goldberg's story. It's before Goldberg's stories got out. Yeah,
but Goldberg had notified.
Yes.
And then they sent out a message. Yep. Yeah, so thank you, Jeffrey Goldberg.
What I'm saying is, to Mary's point, they tried to to sit there and say, we need to change our policies and procedures, but they didn't come out publicly and say, we're sorry, we messed up, we've changed our policies and procedures. They did exactly what Mary said would be the right thing to do, and I agree. The right thing is, we messed up, this was dumb, we've changed our policies and procedures. That's it. At that point, the story pretty much peters out. There's not a lot of fire left. And the Pentagon released directives on not doing it, and they still didn't take advantage of the opportunity.
I would love for Democrats to not, continue to drive the story and try to make it a controversy. I think there's a motivation on their side to try to disrupt all the great success that Trump has had in the first few months of his administration. This was a great opportunity to do it. So, look, if you want the administration to come clean, I think you got to hold the Democrats to not continue to drive and try to make this a scandal on the other side as well.
Yeah, I think then before we get to that, I mean, I don't like whataboutism, but we got to talk. If we're going to be that, if we're going to critique that way, then we got to talk about Jim Jordan and Coomer and their investigations into the Biden administration. And they were going to find the weaponization of government, and they were going to find the Biden crime family, and they found neither. And they spent 4 years doing it. So before we talk about the idea of taking the advantage, both sides do it. I'm not saying it's okay on either side.
They should just be calm and be honest, and not expect the other side to try to rake them through the coals on it to gain political points.
And I think it takes out the momentum. If they would have come out and said, nope, we screwed up, we've changed the procedures. It takes the momentum, because then you can't scream about, they go, how did this happen? Okay, yes, it happened, but we've changed it.
You did get the weird thing yesterday where Tulsi Gabbard going, we're not going to talk about it. Are you on this text thread? I'm not going to talk about it. And then John Ratcliffe going, that's me.
She wouldn't even verify what phone she was on. That's sketchy.
Communicate ahead of time, guys. Mary, great call.
Thanks, Mary. Have a great day.
You're welcome to join the call. Mary's line's open, 303-696-1971. Now is time for Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Good morning, Wednesday, hump day 39 and sunny in Denver, expecting a high of 75 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast is coming up. Our top story.
There was no classified material that was shared in that.
So then if there was no classified material, share it with the committee. You can't have it both ways. These are important jobs. This is our national security.
The intelligence team faces yet another day of grilling on Capitol Hill. Jeffrey Goldberg from The Atlantic, at least that's who he says he works for. He's been involved in almost all of the slimy hoax stories about DJT the past 9 years. He was included in that group chat that discussed plans to strike Houthi targets. Who's to blame? Hey, who's the bad guy? Who's the good guy? What are they doing? Mike Waltz, is he good? How about Goldberg? This was, I guess, interesting. 13 years ago, this one is interesting. Goldberg called Alex Jones and he wanted to do a story on him. Goldberg flew to Austin and told him that he wanted to have dinner, but then he told him he didn't want to do a story.
We want to know who you work for. And I'm like, what do you mean? I just studied politics in the world. And I'm a popular show. He goes, well, the administration, others want to know if you're dangerous. They were trying to figure out who you work for. I knew what he was doing when it happened. I talked about it days after. I said, that guy's a Mossad or CIA, probably both. And now I know a lot more how this stuff works. The real spies are in it all. That's why you got CIA, Mossad, all of it with JFK. It's all just tentacles, heads of the Hydra.
So Jones believes he's a spy. A lot of people, other people do as well. Remember, a few years ago, Tucker Carlson, his signal was hacked by NSA.
And so I was intimidated. I'm embarrassed to admit, but I was completely freaked out by it. I called a U.S. Senator who I know, not that well, but it seems like a trustworthy person. And I told him the story. I said, I just want to tell you this. And then I went on TV on Monday and I'm like, this happened. Congress asked NSA and NSA is like, yes, we did this, but for good reason. What would be a good reason to read what? But the head of NSA, it's fine. Because everyone's in on it. Republicans and Democrats are all in on it. And by it, I mean the assumption that there's no privacy whatsoever, that they have a right to know everything you're saying and thinking. But again, if you have no privacy, you have no freedom.
So maybe the foreign actor is Goldberg. House Speaker Mike Johnson suggesting Congress has the power to eliminate district courts. He talked about those leftist federal judges that have ruled against the Trump administration in recent weeks and said Congress has the ability to get rid of federal courts, citing constitutional authority given to Congress to establish courts. VP J.D. Vance will be meeting with service members today at Marine Corps Base Quantico in Virginia. Vance is the first Marine Corps veteran to serve as vice president. He'll tour the base, meet with Marines, and deliver remarks. His 4 years in the Marines included a tour in Iraq. Investigators releasing more details about a deadly crash in Aurora. Matthew Longshore with Aurora Police says an officer clocked a Tesla going 97 miles an hour on East Alameda Monday night.
We're seeing higher speeds, the number of crashes in this area, things like that. Kind of makes this a hot spot for police to focus their enforcement efforts.
The vehicle refused to stop and wound up running a red light at the intersection of Alameda and Airport Boulevard. That caused a 4-vehicle crash that killed the driver of the Tesla and injured several others. Police say the crash is still under investigation. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett continues her comedy tour. Problem is, she's not funny. Tuesday at the Human Rights Campaign, she made a joke about Texas Governor Greg Abbott, who is in a wheelchair.
Thank you so much, Morgan, because we in these hot-ass Texas streets, honey. Y'all know we got Governor Hot Wheels down there. Come on now. And the only thing hot about him is that he is a hot-ass mess, honey. So yes. Right. Okay. All right. I'm going to move on.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Scott Jennings on CNN.
Yeah, and she tried to walk it back and obviously forgot about her previous commentary using that exact same insult. I don't know how the Democrats came to appoint Jasmine Crockett as the unquestioned leader of your party, but thank God. And I think what she should do is go on TV twice as much as she is right now, maybe 3 times as much, because every time she appears and makes one of these mistakes, says something radical, it only further divides her party from the rest of the other 80% of America who can't stand this.
Good news for a lot of people. FBI whistleblower Kyle Seraphin on InfoWars, he says that 14 terabytes of evidence in the Epstein case have been given to FBI offices around the country, and they are aggressively working on it.
I just listen to what people say, and then I go and see if folks can actually validate that. I've got friends that are working at headquarters. I got a couple of them at this point. They're our friends of mine. It turns out when you become an FBI whistleblower, less and less people talk to you. They just don't want to get involved. But a few of them that are not scared, that are courageous and said they'd be happy to like both lose their job and shut this agency down if it had to be done. They've gone out and proactively told me, he's like, look, we've broken servers. We've had so many people accessing them to do this work. The people.
And that's good news. Nuggets play host to the Bucks tonight. The Avalanche over the Red Wings, 5-2. 36 in Littleton, 37 in Lakewood, 39 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue.
Yeah, there you go. Y'all. Thank you. And I just want to say how much I appreciate Puff Dan for doing the kinds of work that he's doing, because he doesn't have to do this.
Oh, no, he doesn't. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Beautiful. Early spring weather for Denver. Enjoy. We'll be low to mid-70s and sunny today. Lower 40s tonight, sunny. Well into the 70s on Thursday. Lows at night 40s. Friday still making the 70s. Now Friday will bring a few afternoon showers and isolated thunderstorms. A better chance of showers, of rain, and thunder Saturday than a chance of rain and snow Saturday night, Sunday, and much colder. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I want to take a moment here, talk to you about Wound Care Associates of Colorado. They're important to me, my family, and I'm really, really thankful I got to meet Jennifer Walker. Here's the deal. Wound Care Associates of Colorado is changing how chronic wounds, slow-healing cuts, diabetic ulcers, pressure sores are dealt with here in Colorado. They're doing it right. Here's the thing. You know that ignoring the problem doesn't fix the problem. You got to fix the problem. And ignoring a wound that you don't think is a big deal could turn into a very big deal. Had this happen in my family, I've told you about my aunt who had a chronic wound on her leg. The facility she was going to was maintaining the wound, which means kept it open and kept it clean, in theory, until she was exposed to MRSA. Because that tissue and skin was still open, it allowed MRSA access to her body. Yes, that's exactly how the dirt, germs, and bacteria get access to your body in the first place. And the science hippies know this. But some wound care facilities will keep your wound open, claiming to maintain it. That exposed my aunt to MRSA. She had a long bout in and out of the hospital because of it, ended up with some amputations. Jennifer Walker, who started Wound Care Associates of Colorado, lost her uncle from the same thing. Recently, one of my kids went through some surgery, and it wasn't healing properly. There was still part of it that was open. And after a couple of consultations, they did the, we'll maintain and see how it goes. No, we're not, Doc. The first thing I did is contact Wound Care Associates of Colorado because I knew they were going to take care of it properly. And just like you, here's the deal. Wound Care Associates of Colorado goes old school. It's the concierge service without the concierge price. What that means is you set an appointment, you're not going to their offices. They come to you, just like those old school house calls. You get the treatment you need in the privacy, comfort, and care of your own home. Plus, that treatment is personalized to your needs by their wound-certified nurse practitioner, meaning she can write orders, do all of that, prescriptions, everything else. She can take care of the whole 9 yards, and they guarantee better healing outcomes. They want to make sure that your tissue and skin heal. So when someone in my family right now today needed help, well, it was last week when we talked to them and saw them. So when I needed help in my family, there was only one name, only one call that I made. Wound Care Associates of Colorado, because I know they do it differently than everybody else in town, and I know they're the best because they are focused on the best healing outcomes. They want to make sure you're not exposed to the other dirt, germs, and bacteria like what happened to Jennifer Walker's family and like what happened to my family. I wasn't going to mess around. If someone in your family is dealing with a slow-healing cut, a diabetic ulcer, a pressure sore, you have someone that's in a retirement facility, a long-term care facility, you know how dangerous those things can be with bed sores or even just developing that small cut. Make sure you take care of it right. They can visit them in their own home, set up a customized treatment plan, and it will heal the cut, the wound. Don't mess around. When it was real serious in my family, I didn't. You can trust the Wound Care Associates of Colorado. I do. Reach out to them at coloradowound.com. coloradowound.com. I saw what it did to my aunt. I wasn't about to let one of my kids go through the same BS. Don't mess around. A little thing can become a very big deal. Wound Care Associates of Colorado is the only people you need to talk to. coloradowound.com, coloradowound.com. And when you reach out to them, tell them you heard about them here on the Jeff and Bill Show because it helps us out. Back to you, sir.
That's great to hear, Bill. All right, so we're talking Signal. We're talking what happened yesterday before the Senate Intelligence Committee. You had 4 chiefs of intelligence, really. Tulsi Gabbard, the director of the CIA, John Ratcliffe. You had Kash Patel. You had some others. And Michael Bennett. Man, this guy's changed because I haven't heard much from him. Last 6 years. All of a sudden, we got fighting Michael Bennett. Here's Michael Bennett yesterday grilling Trump's intelligence chiefs over this Signal chat issue.
I'm curious about whether you are the CIA director. Okay, this has happened. We know it's happened. Did Jeff Goldberg somehow, did he create a hoax that allowed him to become part of this Signal thread? Please answer the question. You don't insult the intelligence of the American people. Did he invite himself to the Signal thread?
I don't know how he was invited, but clearly he was added.
Clearly it was. Finish your sentence, please.
Clearly he was added to the Signal group. Your question is,
you don't know that the president's national security advisor invited him to join the Signal thread? Everybody in America knows that. Does the CIA director not know that?
I've seen conflicting reports about who added the reporter to the Signal messaging
group. You think that it's perfectly appropriate that there was a reporter added, especially one that the Secretary of Defense says is deceitful, highly discredited, a so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes over and over again? Is your testimony that it was appropriate that he was added to this Signal thread?
No, of course not. And
why did you not call?
Hold on, Senator. You're mischaracterizing my testimony.
Good. You answered the question. Let me ask you: when he was added to the thread, you're the CIA director. Why didn't you call out that he was present on the Signal thread?
I don't know if you use Signal messaging app.
I do. Not for classified information, not for targeting.
Well, neither
not
do I,
for
Senator.
Remote.
Neither do I, Senator.
Well, that's what your testimony is today.
It absolutely is not, Senator. Were you not listening at the beginning?
No.
When I said that I was using it as permitted, it is permissible to use.
I agree that's your testimony.
Yeah.
I agree that's your testimony. You asked me if I use it, and I said not for targeting, not for classified information.
And I said I don't either.
I also know Jeff Goldberg. I don't use it to communicate with him, but you thought it was appropriate. By the way, I think he's one of the more outstanding journalists in America, but I'm shocked to find him on a thread that he's reading in the parking lot of a grocery store in Washington, D.C., and your testimony as the director of the CIA is that it's totally appropriate. No. Is it appropriate?
No,
that the
Director, that is not what I.
Okay,
when did
go
I say
ahead,
it was?
please.
When did I use the word appropriate?
Well, go ahead, please.
Well, I didn't.
That everybody in America.
So clearly,
there's nothing to
Senator,
see here is what your testimony is.
No, I never said that.
This is just a normal day at the CIA where we chat about this kind of stuff over Signal. In fact, it's so normal that the last administration left it here for us. That's your testimony today.
That's your testimony.
No, that's
Senator.
not my testimony. That's what you said.
I didn't say any of those things that you just related, Senator.
I heard you say it. We'll let the American people decide. Let me ask you one final point.
I'm out of time. It. Well, are you going to give me a chance?
Is it appropriate? Did you know that the president's Middle East advisor was in Moscow on this thread while you were, as director of the CIA, participating in this thread? Were you aware of that? Are you aware of that today?
I'm not aware of that today.
This sloppiness, this incompetence, this disrespect for our intelligence agencies and the personnel who work for them is entirely unacceptable. It's an embarrassment.
Senator,
you need to do better. You need to do better.
Man, I would have loved to see that passion from Michael Bennett with regards to the 13 U.S. soldiers that were killed in Afghanistan under Joe Biden. But did you think those punches landed, Bill?
A little bit. The thing is, I would have loved to see that passion on anything from Bennett. Where the hell was this? I don't care. He could have been this passionate about the fact that the ice cream machine at McDonald's isn't working all the time. I mean, where was this dude? I mean, regardless of, I just was like, meh? It just was so weird. And yeah, he should have been more passionate about Afghanistan.
But here's the pivot that's taking place with Michael Bennett. He is watching tens of thousands of people show up for Bernie Sanders' AOC rally in Denver.
Yeah.
And them go, we don't like Chuck Schumer. We don't like the direction of the Democrat Party. We want more fighters in the Democrat Party. It's the rise of the Tea Party within the Democrat Party, you could say. And he's wants to be governor. That's what I've heard.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's my thought.
Him versus Phil Weiser.
I think he has longing eyes towards the governor's mansion, and I think what he's been doing, the last couple of things we've seen him do publicly in these hearings when the cameras are on, it's a new Michael Bennett. It's, as much as we are like poking at Polis and stuff for his rebranding, this is a Michael Bennett rebranding. This dude hasn't been around forever.
And Phil Weiser wants that's who's vying for that, and possibly Jenna Griswold.
I know. It's going to be a nightmare. All of them. But and I'm sorry. Just on a side note, I don't do this a lot as far as pointing out and just making fun of people. And I'm not doing this per se, but just Michael Bennett's speech pattern to me sounds like a character in The Simpsons. It's just that. It's just he has this where his voice sits in his nasal cavity and his speech pattern, he just sounds like a Simpsons character to me. Again, do with it as well. I have my favorite Simpsons character is Ralph Wiggum. Love me some Ralph. I think it's great. It tastes like burning. He has some of the best lines in the entire show. So it's not necessarily a negative. I'm just saying he just reminds me of a Simpsons character. I don't think the punches necessarily landed because I don't think he was that focused on what he was trying to do. I think the idea that one of the people on the chat was in Moscow is the best thing. That and the idea of why didn't you know? Those are the things. Why didn't you know this? Because this is the CIA. It is the Central Intelligence Agency. How come you weren't aware of this intelligence? It's just like when you have Ratcliffe, the National Security Advisor, and he doesn't know there's someone that shouldn't be on the chat. I'm not certain that follows security protocols. Security's in the title. Maybe you need to be more focused on it. Just an idea here. So when the guy from the CIA doesn't appear to have the intelligence about, and I'm not saying smartness, I'm just saying the information about where people in the chat were located, and I'm sorry, again, in the post-mortem, like if we're talking Afghanistan, which was pointed out, the two situations on the text messages, that in the Afghanistan, the first thing is, okay, how did we not see this coming? Who was involved? How did we not see this? The planning? Did we see anything through, the what the Taliban was doing? How come we have the procedure here? Why are they allowed to get so close? How come we didn't see the bomb? All of those things should have been asked. So immediately when Goldberg starts making phone calls to the administration, the very first thing they should have looked at is who's on the list and where were they when we communicated with them? Because during the Biden administration, I believe it's 2022, 2021, there were some U.S. officials that were in Kyiv in Ukraine and using Signal for communications. And they were told by the administration, do not do that because Russia is trying to hack into Signal. They know who you are. They are going to identify your phone and they are going to try to hack in. This dude's in Moscow. And so, again, the fact that, again,
why is he there? Is he negotiating? He must be negotiating some of the Ukraine peace deal.
Stuff. But even then, it's the idea of, and again, I'm not saying that that Ratcliffe is irresponsible or can't do his job, nothing like that. But what I'm saying is that why didn't you ask? Why didn't you say, where were these principles to make sure this thing is locked down? What is our possible exposure? It seems like none of that was done. And that to me is shocking just based on a post-mortem. The other thing is, and we'll get to this a bit later, is we'll talk about Trump and what he knew and what he didn't know and when he knew. That also is another question that I've got.
Phone lines are open, 303-696-1971. What do you think of this fiasco? Is it much to do about nothing? Jeffery Goldberg, an editor that has made stuff up in the past. He was the one that claimed Trump was calling dead soldiers losers and suckers, even though that's been wildly debunked.
But I think John Kelly did verify that as far as one source. Again, not triangulation, a singular source, and there are other people in the room that said it didn't happen.
But John Bolton being one of them saying that never happened. Multiple Trump officials that were present that were there said it didn't happen. So not a guy with a storied career of, and from my perspective, getting the facts right. He seems to have it out for Trump. So did he do things right in this case by notifying, by sticking around, by reporting on this? Or was this a conversation he never should have been a part of anyways? He should have notified people that he was in this list and then runs out there after all this takes place. Could have easily just told the White House, by the way, you guys are getting some stuff wrong. Writes an article about it. Uses his platform to shame the White House on what was clearly a mistake, including this guy in to Signal. And did he now threaten the national security of the United States by telling the whole world this is how our security chiefs communicate?
That's interesting that you bring that up, because I think that is something that has been left outside the normal conversation. Is how does this read in Moscow? How does this read in Beijing? How does this read in North Korea? What's going on there? And people aren't going to like this. And so call in, tell me why I'm wrong, 303-696-1971, 303-696-1971. But my impression of the intelligence services in our enemies, those in Russia, those in China, those in Iran, those in North Korea, this, to me, is sending a message to all of our enemies that, yes, the administration is just as dumb as you thought they were. They are just as stupid as you thought they were, because these are the conversations they are having on Signal, and we know, and we can't assume.
There's nothing wrong with the conversation. I'm looking at it right now. It's a perfectly fine conversation.
Oh, I understand, but it is. But you don't want to. Would you think that wouldn't Moscow like to have this information prior to the attack? Wouldn't China want to have this information? Iran would be dying to get this information prior to the attack.
Yeah,
they would
thank
love
you,
to have
Jeffrey
this.
Goldberg, for showing everybody.
But it was
this.
post. It was post-attack. It's
Right.
not prior, and that's what a journalist
But
should
you
do.
still no.
That's what a journalist should do.
All
yes,
right.
the journalist should be doing. You
What
don't
do you-
compromise it before the attack.
No, he
You talk
compromised
about it
national
afterwards.
security by releasing this
Afterwards.
information.
No, not at all. It's the people that are compromising national security are those that are doing the conversation on Signal. That's exactly what it is. Tell me why I'm wrong.
303-696-1971 or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line 720-819-5115. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. So we're talking the signal issue that took place with Donald Trump's security team as they were discussing the attack against the Houthis in Yemen. Now, Mike Waltz went on Laura Ingraham yesterday to try to explain what happened here. And I appreciate Laura just trying to get to the bottom of it. Like, who added this dude? Jeffery Goldberg, the editor of The Atlantic, who's, from my perspective, made up stuff about Trump in the past. Not a guy you want to add to a list. He shouldn't even be anywhere near the White House. I mean, if you're kicking out the AP for not citing Gulf of America, why is this guy even in your orbit?
No reporters should be on these conversations. That's the weird part is that, again, no one, from what I'm looking at, is no one looked at the roster and just who did they think? Because when you leave those chats, my understanding is when he leaves, it identifies and says this person has left the chat. And you get that with other chat things, but I guess Signal does the same thing from my research. And what name popped up when he left? Who did they think he was? Or if it said Jeffrey Goldberg left the chat, how come everybody didn't go, uh-oh? that should have been the first thing. So one of those two things should have happened, and I can't figure out why we don't know this.
And it's a weird world they're in because I worked for a consulting firm that was tangentially connected with Rick Santorum. Rick's running in 2012 for president. He wins Iowa, and then all of a sudden, I'm getting emails from Politico that's like, "Hey,
yeah, give us the stuff.
Can you just tell me anything you know about him?"
Yeah,
and I swear. No one's going to know it's you.
Yeah, it's like a Cheech and Chong stand like, hey, is Dave here, man? I talk to Dave.
I mean, so you end up in this real, once you reach those pinnacles of power, everybody wants an angle, right?
Yeah.
For their own career purposes. They want a breaking story. Just, please tell us. And I told him to go pound sand. But it's. I imagine these guys are hit up by stuff like this on a bizarrely odd basis, all the time. Like you're constantly getting emails because they're trying to hack you, right?
Jeffrey Goldberg, there was an interview he did yesterday, and that was one of the things that he said. He said, we get stuff like this all the time of people pretending to be this level of, informant. People all the time send us emails about, oh, I know this scandal. Oh, this person. Oh, my cousin works here, and they're going to tell me. All the time that happens and comes across his desk.
Well, Jay from Louisville with a really good text message in that I've been thinking too is no one suspecting that Goldberg was added in bad faith by a member of the chat? Kind of like there may have been a rat in the group.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right, here's Mike Waltz on Laura Ingraham yesterday.
I can tell you for 100%, I don't know this guy. I know him by his horrible reputation, and he really is the bottom scum of journalists. And I know him in the sense that he hates the president, but I don't text him. He wasn't on my phone, and we're going to figure out how this happened.
So you don't know what staffer is responsible for this right now?
Well, look, a staffer wasn't responsible, and look, I take full responsibility. I built the group. My job is to make sure everything's coordinated.
But how did the number?
I
mean, I don't mean to be pedantic here, but how did the number?
Have you ever had somebody's contact that shows their name, and then you have somebody else's number there?
I never make those mistakes.
Right? You got somebody else's number on someone else's contact. So of course I didn't see this loser in the group. It looked like someone else. Now whether he did it deliberately or it happened in some other technical mean is something we're trying to figure out.
So your staffer did not put his contact information.
No,
but how did it end up in your phone?
Well, that's what we're trying to figure out.
Okay, but that's a pretty big problem.
That's what we've got the best technical minds, right?
That's disturbing.
And that's where I'm sure everybody out there has had a contact where it was said one person and then a different phone number.
But you've never talked to him before, so how's the number on your phone? I mean, I'm not an expert in any of this, but it's just curious. How's the number on your phone?
Well, if you have somebody else's contact and then somehow it gets sucked in.
someone sent you that
it gets sucked in.
Was there someone else supposed to be on the chat that wasn't on the chat that you thought was on the chat?
So the person that I thought was on there was never on there. It was this
Who
guy.
was that? What person?
Well, I'm not. Look, okay. Laura, I take responsibility. I built the group.
Okay.
So but look, that's the part that we have to figure out.
Why don't we know who it's supposed to be?
Yeah, that's one thing. But the other thing is it's somebody else's number under a different name. I can think of maybe one time that happened, but it's because I had the same name. Yeah. I was talking to somebody that was like John Smith, but then I knew another John Smith, and I got that wrong.
Yeah.
But I
have
that doesn't make sense to
me.
me.
I'm going to show this up the back of the phone to the camera here. This is what I have here. The phone that we use for the show, that I use for the show. I've got 3 Dave Williams in there. And I have to identify who's who. I got 3
By
in
the
there.
way, if
and
you
a couple of years ago,
call
did the wrong one.
Bill Thorpe on his voicemail on his work phone.
Yeah.
He's the producer of the George Brocco
Yeah,
show.
exactly. 'Cause
We've only been doing this a year, Bill.
I know. It shows you my attention to detail and how important I think my outgoing voicemail message is. This is okay. When I took over from Casey Bloyer to produce Pete's show, it was Casey's voice on the voicemail for at least 6 months. At least 6 months.
That argument doesn't make sense. But I will tell you, like, if there was a Russian hacker or a North Korean hacker, I don't think Iranians are smart enough to do this. But if there was like a hacker that was like, what's really going to screw up with these guys? Putting Jeffrey Goldberg into this chat. That's kind of amazing. Like, that would be like, the more I think about this, the more I'm kind of leaning that direction.
Here's the thing, though.
That somebody was like, you really want to mess these guys up? Like, you really want to get under their skin? Add Jeffrey Goldberg to a signal chat on security?
Yeah. Now here's the thing.
That's a hell of a hack.
Now, if it is, if that's what we think happened, if that's going to be the narrative that some other unknown actor was able to hack into the system and add Jeffrey Goldberg because they wanted to do it this way, that should scare the bejesus out of you, because that means they can hack into the signal communications and add people, and they know all of that.
Yeah,
and the other thing that not a lot of people are talking about is we can assume this ain't the first time they held this conversation. What other conversations are going on using Signal? What other conversations are happening inside of our government that may pertain to access to Treasury Department records, may contain access to Social Security records, may contain access to Department of Defense records, Department of Justice records? What other possibilities could be discussed on Signal? And if we assume, well, obviously the administration didn't make this mistake, it was an unknown actor that was able to force Jeffrey Goldberg into the participation circle and sent out an illegal text, then you need to stop using Signal today. The whole idea of it being, I know, but the whole idea of them going, well, it was approved, it was approved. No, you say, no, we're never using this again. We're not using this. We changed the rules. Yeah, it should scare everybody to death. It really should.
All right, we'll continue our conversation. And the next question I have for you is, when did Trump find out about this, you think?
Yeah, why didn't he know? First thing was, I don't know. Don't know anything about it.
Was that the first answer? I didn't see that yesterday.
That was
in the
first
media.
thing. Well, I didn't hear anything about it. Then he just says the Atlantic sucks. That was his answer.
Classic. Yeah. All right. We'll get to your phone calls and texts. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. The Atlantic just releasing the entire text message conversation that took place on Signal. Bill, I think now that I look at these text messages, you've had a chance to look at them briefly too. I mean, this just came out recently. I think this is much to do about nothing. I think this will be done in the next 48 hours.
Yeah, should anybody pay a price for it? Or is it just me?
I think they got to figure out how and who's responsible for this issue. Now, Mike Waltz saying that, or how Jeffery Goldberg got on this text message thread, he's saying his staff's not responsible.
Yeah.
I look back at this text message thread and I go, I think it's Alex Wong.
Yeah,
I don't know. He
Is,
starts by saying my staff, Alex Wong's going to put together this Tiger team.
That's what I'm looking at too. Is I feel it's highly unlikely that the the head of this is going to compose the group themselves.
Right.
It just doesn't seem like in the power structure of things that's something you pass on to your second. It just there's nothing about that looks at it. And I believe this will blow over after a while. And even in the stuff that Goldberg, he didn't release all the details about the attack. But I think the issue is, it's who we're attacking, when we're attacking, what we're using, what's going to be hit in the timeline. That's important. That's sensitive information and things that Ratcliffe said. Those discussions should be taken on a classified channel. I think that's what we take away from this. The other thing that I think is going to be the takeaway is, this is amateur hour. That this confirms a lot of what some of our allies and enemies are really afraid of, that this is amateur hour. And part of that is because...
I don't see it as amateur hour. It might be an innocent... The worst it is an innocent mistake that took place. No one's trying to harm America here. But the idea that the Biden administration didn't use these same platforms, I think that was debunked yesterday with John Ratcliffe.
No, I'm sure they used them. Yeah.
How is Trump amateur hour when Biden was using the same platforms?
It's because of the nature of the communication. And again, to show that I'm not saying that the Biden administration was the total professionals, and I think it's stupid for them to be using Signal in and of itself, especially since Jeff, myself, and all of our listeners pay tax dollars to set up governmental communication channels.
But you know how bad they are.
But I don't care. We're paying for them. You're elected. Use the stuff we're paying for. If you don't like it, go fix it. Stop going out to the public sector and saying we're going to do something better.
Hold on. Is it the free market that's providing better services?
I'm not saying they can't. I'm just saying fix it. I'm just saying if we're paying for it, use it.
Do you remember the frustration? Do you ever watch those 9/11 documentaries when they're like the president couldn't call anybody because of how stupid the systems were?
Yeah.
And sometimes these secure systems create so many burdens that maybe they don't work.
And I'm just saying that if we're going to have a discussion about who we're going to attack, when and how, use the government stuff that we're paying for.
True point.
Yeah, but I'm not saying Biden didn't do the same stupid stuff. We just don't have proof of it. I'm not saying that
Bill,
he did stupid
stuff. Who's doing the happy dance in the midst of all of this?
Who?
Mike Johnston.
Oh, yeah, you're right. You are right.
Because it was
That's
a week
great way to end this hour. You are so right.
It was a week ago that the scandal was Mike Johnston's using Signal, which it's a different context. He's actually purposely trying to hide things from the Trump administration.
Purposefully.
But in this case, he just goes, look, you mad at me? How about those guys for using Signal?
Right. What a perfect way to end this entire discussion, my man.
All right, we got the superintendent from the Elizabeth School District coming up. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is 710 KNUS.
It is 8 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Wednesday, March 26, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show. News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center. We've got a great hour planned for you. Should the Elizabeth School District be forced, compelled by law, to put pornographic smut material in kids' libraries? If you're wondering what in the world just happened, you're not alone. The ACLU and progressives trying to force the hand of a local school district here in Colorado to carry books that, if I read on the air, would result in my termination and the threatening of this station's FCC license. But they want your elementary, middle school, and high school kids to read this. You're never going to believe the battle that's brewing that could possibly go all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. We're going to talk with Dan Snowberger, Superintendent of the Elizabeth School District, as well as Jeff Maher, Public Information Officer for the Elizabeth School District. You probably saw the headlines. We're going to give you the inside story on this. You're not going to want to miss it. But now is time for news with Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
41 and sunny in Denver. Beautiful day expected today. High of 75. The 7-10 5-day forecast is coming up. Our top story leaders from NPR and PBS will be on Capitol Hill today to defend federal support for public broadcasting. Oh, this will be great. Get your popcorn out for this one. They'll appear before the House DOJ subcommittee, where they will also defend their content after some Republicans have accused them of bias. No way. Instagram is announcing a new program that allows schools to report posts and student accounts that violate the app's anti-bullying guidelines. The program sends the reports directly to Instagram, where they are automatically prioritized for review, and schools are alerted to actions taken. More texts have been released by journalist Jeffery Goldberg, who was added to a group text with DJT administration officials, of course. Or is he someone who hacked the system and he doesn't actually work for the newspaper? Who knows? He got in there. They were talking about airstrikes in Yemen. The mission was successful, so it didn't affect what they were doing. The Atlantic published what the text said, and they show that, hey, guess what? We have patriotic Americans in leadership roles. And 47 said it was their first glitch, and they'll learn from it. Ironically, DJT penning his John Hancock declassifying all the weaponized fake stories pushed by rodents like Goldberg.
We have a presidential memorandum for your attention. This memorandum requires the immediate declassification of all FBI files relating to the Crossfire Hurricane investigation. This was obviously one of the instances of the weaponization of law enforcement powers of prosecution against you and others. We believe that it's long past time for the American people to have a full and complete understanding of what exactly is in those files.
Which gives the media the right to go in and check it. You probably won't bother because you're not going to like what you see. But this was total weaponization. It's a disgrace. Should never happen in this country. But now you'll be able to see for yourselves, all declassified. And frankly, the FBI should be ashamed of themselves, and so should the Department of Justice, and so should Biden.
Amen to that. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem will be in Central America today to tour a prison in El Salvador holding hundreds of U.S. deportees. Nome says the prison is holding illegal immigrants with ties to TDA. El Salvador is the first leg of Nome's trip that will also include stops in Colombia and Mexico. So Michelle Obama continues to talk, but she's not trying to talk about going back to D.C., thank God.
And so when people ask me, would I ever run? The answer is no. I mean, you then if you ask me that, then you have absolutely no idea the sacrifice that your kids make when your parents are in that role. Not only am I not interested in politics in that way, but the thought of like putting my girls back into that, that spotlight when they are just now establishing themselves. It's
Yes.
like, okay, I think we've done enough.
Yeah, I totally get it. I am right there with you. Stay away, please. Denver Air Connection will begin flights out of Pueblo Memorial Airport on May 1st, replacing Southern Airways as the federally subsidized carrier. Greg Pedroza with Pueblo Memorial hopes the move proves Pueblo can support more travel options in the future.
I get a lot of questions about why can't Pueblo go here? Why can't Pueblo go there? Why is it always Denver? Well, this is the first step to prove that our community can sustain a travel base. The airlines will see that and then they'll want to expand.
The airline will offer 12 round trips to Denver each week under the Essential Air Service program, with the federal government paying over $6 million for the 2-year contract. American, Delta, and United Airlines all use Denver Air Connection. Nuggets play host to the Bucks tonight, and the Avalanche over the Red Wings last night. 5-2 the final, 38 in Parker, 39 in North Glen, 41 in Denver, and Jeff and Bill continue.
Democrats have never endorsed political violence.
I think you're okay with you okay with punching. Like, it's Ted Cruz. I mean, like, this dude has to be knocked over the head, like, hard.
Wow. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Beautiful. Early spring weather for Denver. Enjoy. We'll be low to mid-70s and sunny today. Lower 40s tonight. Sunny. Well into the 70s on Thursday. Lows at night 40s. Friday still making the 70s. Now Friday will bring a few afternoon showers and isolated thunderstorms. A better chance of showers, of rain, and thunder Saturday than a chance of rain and snow Saturday night, Sunday, and much colder. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Hey guys, I want to talk to you about your hair. If you're losing it and desire to have it back, then Advanced Hair Restoration has the easiest guaranteed solution. Their simple one-day treatment offers life-changing results. I've seen it with my own eyes. It's not magic, but close to it. They put hair where you need it, and bam, it grows. It's actually science. Advanced Hair has it all. Top-rated Dr. Tanya Paul's modern technology, and best of all, you get your very own natural hair that begins regrowing the very next day. Advanced Hair even guarantees it will grow for life. So schedule your free consultation now. Here's the phone number, guys. Put it in your phone, 720-459-HAIR. 720-459-HAIR. It'll change your life. If you qualify, you'll get $250 off and 250 free hair grafts. Advanced Hair is the winner of Westward's Best of Denver and has changed the lives of tens of thousands of people. So don't wait. Check out their before and afters online for yourself. Here's the phone number again, 720-459-HAIR or advancedhair.com. That's advancedhair.com. Should a local school district be required to carry pornographic smut material in elementary school, middle school, and high school libraries by the force of law? Well, the ACLU and one judge in particular does think so. It's a battle brewing, and it's a battle for parental rights and for the freedom of kids not to have to be exposed to this type of harmful stuff. This is a really critical discussion we're about to have. I do got to give you a warning, though, that some of the content we're going to discuss is not appropriate. I can read parts of this. Jeff Maher can read parts of this. He's the public information officer for the Elizabeth School District. There are other parts we cannot read that are so over the top that you cannot read them on public airwaves, but they want your kids' libraries to carry this. Okay? We're going to give you insight, update on this case, but I got to tell you, if you got little ones, we're giving you fair warning. This is not appropriate for young people. All right. With that said, joining me live in studios, Dan Snowberger and Jeff Maher. Gentlemen, thanks for joining the Jeff and Bill Show today.
Yeah, thank you. Great to be back with you.
So we've talked to you about the case. I want to give people just a real brief update or background. You gathered a bunch of parents together because you were getting complaints about books in the library. Yep. And you set about a very public effort to analyze these books to see if they're appropriate for those particular age groups, elementary, middle school, high school. Parents weighed in. Your committee analyzed these books, determined they were not appropriate. Now, you could have very easily, you had the power to go and take these books and just throw them in the dumpster and never say a single thing. But you decided, I'm going to do this in a very transparent way so that the community can weigh in. And I'm not just doing this on my own personal analysis. So you get rid of these 18 books. Then the ACLU comes around and says, no, elementary school children must have access to pornographic material, which is a crazy argument. And that somehow you're violating the free speech rights of these authors, that the library has to carry these books or it's some violation of their free speech. They sue you. It goes before a judge, and the judge says, you have to put these books back in. What's happened since? No. Give us an update.
Well, last Wednesday, that's exactly the order we received. We were ordered a preliminary injunction to return the 19 books that our community and our board, after thorough review, determined were inappropriate in our library, to return those to the library by yesterday evening. We appealed and asked for a stay of that order to the district judge after not hearing back from her. We appealed on Friday after not hearing back from her Monday evening. We appealed to the 10th Circuit. Finally, yesterday, we did hear from the Denver judge who did stay her order and agree to hear the appeal and have asked the plaintiffs to respond to that by Friday. We don't know what to expect, but honestly, I'm not sure we will get much different. We asked for a hearing. The district would like to present its side of the story. We were denied that opportunity. We were denied a hearing to actually present the facts of this case. Instead, she ordered us to return the books. And so that's a little confusing. We believe in the rule of law, and there's an appellate process for a reason. Judges are not infallible. And so we certainly intend to go as far as we need to, because we believe very strongly. Our community has spoken. Public schools belong to the community. And in Elizabeth, the reason we didn't do the secret, let's throw them away, let's not tell anyone, is they're the schools that belong to the community, and the community spoke. And since that time, our community has been very galvanized behind this effort. The number of emails that I could read on air today from parents that are allowed to be read, are overwhelmingly supportive of the efforts the school district has taken. And so we're going to continue this battle because we believe it's the right thing to do for kids.
Now, I'm talking with Dan Snowberger, Superintendent of the Elizabeth School District. I want to get into the content here in a second, okay? But I want to set up the argument that's taking place here, because what you're going to read in the media, Denver Post and others, is that you all decided to take these books out because of the sexual identity of the author, the race of the author, or the fact that you disagreed with the LGBTQ worldview, or that essentially that you're racist. That's what's coming from some of the mainstream media sources, okay? And that's what the ACLU is saying too, right?
Correct. And it's funny because when we actually, these websites and these blogs that have celebrated this ruling, when we post quotes from those books, they immediately are flagged as pornography and taken down. So even these sites that are celebrating the judge's ruling that, this is great for democracy, great that, children are finally, their rights are restored, won't even allow these quotes from the books to be posted on their websites. So,
and I think there's plenty of evidence that you have you have authors of other races in your library. It's
Exactly.
It's not like you went on a mission to clear out a particular race. And then you also have books about being with gay characters and being a gay person. So there's plenty of evidence out there that this wasn't systemic across the libraries to try to clear out.
The argument out there is false. And,
Right.
and there's clear evidence to defend that. And that's why we need a hearing. That's why we want to go before the judge and actually present the facts. Cherry picking some emails that were recorded does not state the facts.
Yep. Okay. So I'm going to reiterate this again. What I'm about to read to you are excerpts from these books that have been pulled out by the Elizabeth School District, and these are not appropriate for little ears. Okay? So if you have children, I highly encourage you to turn off the radio. And I don't want to do this because I like our listeners. But this is not appropriate for young people to hear. What you're about to hear are some of the excerpts from the books that the Elizabeth School District believes are not right for young people to be exposed to. And it makes me mad to even have to read this because it's disgusting. I froze as he pushed inside. There it is. Oh God, there it goes. It went all right with an audible tear. Pain mushroomed into agony, and all I could do was go stiff. This is the book Crank by Ellen Hopkins.
And that's a tame quote from that book. That's one we can read on the air without your FCC license being pulled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know why somebody would feel like that's appropriate for kids to read.
What educational value? What standard?
That's a great
what Colorado standard is that supporting? That's all I'd like someone to tell me. We are an educational institution. Our job is to educate children to rewrite, do math, understand history, understand civics, understand science. Tell me where that applies.
I mean, and we're not hitting those benchmarks. We're having this major conversation about education. I went down to the teachers union protest outside the state capitol on Thursday. They're having their funds cut. They're upset about that. We're not meeting the grades. You have the Department of Education being wound down in Washington, D.C. Big conversations about the quality of education in America right now. And the ACLU and this particular judge want that in our kids' schools.
As I said, Jeff, 40% of kids in Colorado are proficient in reading, and this is a conversation we're having. It's sad.
Wow. It's heartbreaking that this is anywhere near kids. And I want you to remind people, this is not a public library.
No,
that's an important distinction.
Yeah. Our policies in our district outline the library supports our curriculum. Our library is a resource to support the curriculum in the district. And so materials in that library should align with and support the curriculum in the district. Public school districts have swayed from their original mission. Our mission is to educate children to be successful citizens. That quote and that book that you just quoted is not going to accomplish that. And so why that book would appear on a shelf in a public school library is beyond me.
All right, are you ready for it to get worse?
There's a lot more.
Well, yep. Let me. This one makes me want to throw something across the room. There's an effort by the ACLU and a judge to mandate what I'm about to read to you to be in a kid's school library. Confused at his tears and at the sticky stuff icing her hands, still, Khalil pleaded, "Don't cry, Daddy. What's the matter? Didn't I love you good enough?" That's the book Identical by Ellen Hopkins. My sense is that is essentially an incestuous sexual encounter.
Exactly. That is it. And again, a tame quote from that book, one that we can read on the air, and as adults we know what they're referring to. It's sad.
I mean, the text messages are blowing up here. It's disgusting. I feel like I need to take a shower right now, even reading this stuff. The Elizabeth School District is facing the ACLU and a particular judge here that wants to force this content into a kid's library so that kids have access to it. Now, they are facing a massive uphill battle. The ACLU is a hundreds of millions of dollars organization, a national organization that is come down on this school district with all of its power. This is a battle that they want to win and force school districts across the country to carry these types of books and not have any choice in this. It's about control and it's about power. This small little school district is fighting back, and they need your support, okay? If you're outraged, as I am, as anybody should be, I want you to go to the Elizabeth School District webpage, elizabethschooldistrict.org. That's elizabethschooldistrict.org. And right at the top, they have a fundraising page there. I want you to go donate to them right now. This is the next in line of these battles we've had here in Colorado. You had Jack Phillips, you had Lori Smith. There's a one coming on conversion therapy. ADF's working on that one. Here's another one. We have to protect children in this state from this type of agenda being pushed on them. Okay? The parents don't want this in their schools, in the district. And you have proven that the parents don't want this. The community doesn't want this. They want to put reading and math first, not this type of agenda in the kids' schools. They have said no. They followed a process. And now this massive organization is trying to force them. This is a David versus Goliath fight. And I want you to go to elizabethschooldistrict.org. At the top there's a fundraising link where you can support what they're doing to protect kids. Now, there's a third part that you had in this filing. And there's a lot more content in here, but I sent it to our operations manager and he will not allow me to read it.
Yep.
That's how you thought what I gave you was bad. There's another level to this that our operations manager has specifically said violates FCC rules. So I want you to understand that. If I read this content on air, you would have a federal investigation into this radio station.
Yep.
And they want that content in the kids' schools.
Yep. Jeff, I'm going to say all the media sources out there that have covered the other side of this issue, I'd love to see them read those quotes on their air. It has been so biased in the coverage here in the Denver metro area on this story. And it is frustrating. It is very frustrating as a school district.
Yeah. Wow.
And I was doing a search yesterday of recent articles covering this from Denver media, and I can't find a single one that takes a critical look at what's inside these books. They simply post the titles that have been removed, and then they can cherry pick and put things in bold and talk about how one particular book is hailed by a certain group and that this is just a bunch of conservatives in Elbert County banning books. but none of them are actually looking at some of this stuff. And I will say that at a board meeting in the fall, we had school board members read some of this content that you're reading in the board meeting. And some of the individuals who were outspoken advocating for this to stay in the libraries got up and left before those excerpts were read. They didn't even want to hear them themselves. So I found that to be really interesting. And the fact that under no circumstances does Elizabeth School District get a fair shot in the media. And being a former media person myself, I find that to be really disturbing.
It's heartbreaking. Well, I will tell you this. Text messages coming in. By the way, we're talking with Dan Snowberger, Jeff Maher, Elizabeth School District. 1712, God bless the superintendent there and principal for these standards these people fight for. God bless them. They are advocates for the children. I think that's right. I think you guys are putting the children first. Because to your point about education requirements, how in the world how does reading about a incestuous sexual encounter between a father and a daughter at all help prepare these children to become quality citizens moving forward?
Yep, exactly. And there's books about school shootings. There's books about suicide. There's books in that list about many things, planting seeds with children, about things that they shouldn't be thinking about at these ages. Again, this is a fight that we are bound and determined to take as far as necessary. And ensure that we can do the right things for children and that other school districts will be able to do the same.
People asking about the attorneys that you have pulled together to help you. They're asking, have you worked with groups like Alliance Defending Freedom? I think they may become a partner later. They're kind of more on the appellate side of things, but
Correct.
You've got a great team of lawyers right now.
We do.
Talk a little bit about them and the strategy moving forward.
Sure. Jonathan Mitchell in First and 14th is a local firm is First and 14th. Jonathan Mitchell is a former Solicitor General in Texas. He's on our team. All of them have extensive experience at the constitutional law level. We believe that's the issue here. And so they have been an amazing force for us to defend the district and to bring the key facts here. This is not settled law in the state in the United States of America. The PICO decision back in the 70s did not have a majority of justices weigh in on an opinion. It was a split decision. There were only 3 judges that signed on to a single opinion. And so this will need to go as high as necessary for us to have a clear guidance as to, do school districts and do government entities have a right to curate their libraries to ensure that they meet the values of their community. And again, nothing about these authors. These authors have written material. Some may find them appropriate at certain ages. We just don't believe they belong in a school. And again, this is no disparity towards them. Whether I would read that is not at issue here. It doesn't belong in a school library, and that's really what we're trying to get at.
You're nicer, and I get the idea that you've got to remain rather neutral. The sense I'm getting from you is that the content, while you condemn it for use of kids, you're not personally animated or motivated against these particular authors. I'll be. I think there's a broken. You're writing about that stuff. You're an author that writes about that stuff.
Let me be clear.
Yeah.
I'm not reading that. That's not a book I would choose in my personal library either.
Gosh.
But again, I'm going to acknowledge that adults have their rights to read what they choose.
Right. And then the key word being adults.
Adults. Exactly. We're talking about a high school library where 14-year-olds are. That some of these books, 14-year-olds, kids who are still mini playing with Legos and playing video games, playing Minecraft.
17-year-olds shouldn't be reading that stuff either. So, look, and you guys, even the ACLU, I've read the court filings. Mm-hmm. The ACLU gets mad that you even want to notify parents.
I know, exactly. Yep.
So you created another standard that just said, hey, mom and dad, just heads up.
Yep.
By the way, your kid checked out this book, and this is another list of books that aren't nearly as bad as this, but as a parent, like if my kid checked out, Quran, for instance, okay, well, I want to talk about what you're reading, why you're interested in that type of thing. God forbid that happens.
We call those sensitive topics.
Yeah.
Graphic violence, books that have drug or alcohol use, books that have any type of sexual content that may not be graphic. Those books are flagged as sensitive in our library collection. And when they're checked out by a student and a parent has not opted their child out of sensitive content material, their parent gets an email immediately when that book is checked out, so they can have a conversation with their child. They can ask to see that book. They can determine, is that a book they want their child to read? We are empowering parents. Our district is aligned with parental rights. It is time we allow parents to raise their children, and we do the educating of children to be successful citizens in our society.
And I did want to point out that a recent Forbes article estimates that 4 million kids are being homeschooled across the United States, the majority of them coming from Christian families. And you have to wonder, why is that? Because you can't attribute that to the pandemic anymore. Yeah. Perhaps these parents feel like they've lost control over what kind of content their students are being exposed to when they send them off to school. And that's happening all across the country. And it's great to know that there is a school district in Colorado that is holding out, staying strong, keeping to our principles, just like when you and I went to school, where we could go to school, learn the curriculum, and go home and be excited about it, instead of these shady, secretive things happening inside classrooms. That doesn't happen at our school district, and I'm proud to be a part of a place that protects that.
But, and Jeff, you said it beautifully. I think at the end of the day, Jeff Maher, Public Information Officer with Elizabeth School District, and Dan Snowberger, I think people are tired of the agendas. Yeah. Right? You just feel like there's an agenda being driven all the time on your kids. You're not part of that conversation, and I feel like as a parent, sometimes you got to like unwind whatever happened at school that day, and you're just going, Can we get to the basics of preparing our kids for success? Why is it about driving your political agenda? We got lots of text messages coming in. 5114, great job on protecting the youth. They're telling you guys they'll be exposed eventually to this stuff. But look, it doesn't need to come through the school platform. All right, we've got phone calls. We've got text. I'm talking to Dan Snowberger, Superintendent of the Elizabeth School District, and Jeff Maher. He's the Public Information Officer. A major ACLU court battle brewing in our state. You're not going to want to miss this conversation. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk station, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. This is just one of those hard conversations that makes me physically sick to my stomach. Okay. In studios, Dan Snowberger, he's the superintendent of the Elizabeth School District, and along with him is Jeff Maher, the public information officer. And they're in a major ACLU battle, okay? They went through a whole public effort to examine the books in their kids' libraries. They had parents look at them. They had a working group. They received feedback. And they discovered a number of books that were in the library that are just wildly inappropriate. And I've been asked to give this disclaimer. This conversation we're having is not appropriate for young children. If you have young children nearby, you need to, I recommend just go away for now. This is not appropriate in a library. It's not even appropriate for us to be discussing on the radio. I hate the fact we're having to have this conversation. This stuff is so graphic and pornographic that it makes me physically sick to even talk about it. But there's a judge here in Colorado, along with the ACLU, that is working to force the hand of this school district to put these books back in the schools. Okay. Now, Jeff, what you're about to read is an elementary-aged book.
Correct.
Called George. And again, I'm warning you, if you have young ears, turn off the radio. If this makes you mad, I'm going to give you something that you can do about it to help these guys out. But George, go ahead. Or Jeff, go ahead and read George.
So this book is, as you said, titled George, alternatively named Melissa. It's about a character who is in 4th grade who is transitioning. And this is from page 44. She immersed her body in the warm water and tried not to think about what was between her legs. But there it was, bobbing in front of her. Now keep in mind, this book was available to elementary kids as early as age 5. So when you hear this, just ask yourself, would you want a 5-year-old or 6 or 7-year-old, anyone in elementary being exposed to this? This is from page 47. So George knew it could be done. A boy could become a girl. She had since read on the internet that you could take girl hormones that would change your body, and you could get a bunch of different surgeries if you wanted them and had the money. This was called transitioning. You could even start before you were 18 with pills called androgen blockers that stopped the boy hormones already inside you from turning your body into a man's. But for that, you needed your parents' permission. In elementary schools.
I mean, it's just so reeks of an agenda being driven.
It is.
Right.
Right, and kind of a shaming, like you just saw, you see it in front of you bobbing.
Yep.
Obviously, shaming the current body that he has.
Yeah, exactly.
And keep in mind the average age that children these days are exposed to pornography is 8 to 12. That's the first time that they're exposed to it. And that goes along with the things that we can't read on the air. And there's a lot. I have a whole stack of excerpts from these books that I cannot read on the air.
It gets way worse.
It gets way,
and that's we
way
just
worse.
wanted to show what elementary, with a 5-year-old, when you get into middle school and high school, and what we read on the during the last segment was outright sexual encounter between a father and a daughter, and detailed, explicit coverage of that. It was horrible.
Yep.
So you guys go through this process. You flag these books. The parents agree with you. We want these out. And lo and behold, here comes the ACLU and a judge here in Colorado that want to force you to put it back in. If this outrages you, which it should, I want you to go to elizabethschooldistrict.org. elizabethschooldistrict.org. They are raising the funds. This is a small little school district. You heard all the cuts we're having to education. All right, now they got to go fight this massive behemoth of an organization called the ACLU in order to defend the rights to not put pornography in the kids' schools, libraries, okay? Click at the very top there, the opportunity to donate and support them, because they're going to have to build a legal team to go against it. But Dan, What are parents saying? They're seeing this in the news. Give me a sense of what parents are responding
our
to.
parents are overwhelmingly in support of us because, again, we engaged them in this process, Jeff. This was not a behind-the-scenes, a rogue board doing something against the will of the community. Public schools belong to the community, and this board engaged the community, and this board was overwhelmingly elected by the community. This wasn't a 51% election. This was a 75 to 80% election. And so parents are behind us. Here's a great example of the rights that'll be infringed upon if we must honor this original court order that's now been stayed. I would not allow my child access if they are put back in the shelves. This is an email from a parent. I do not think my children would purposely check out a book on the list, but if accidental, I think they would struggle mentally with the content as it's not age appropriate. For the same reason, I don't allow R-rated movies, and I would not want R-rated books in my library. So, I mean, this is I have been flooded with emails from parents. We keep our parents up to date on what's going on. That's on my website, on the elizabethschooldistrict.org. If you drop down to the superintendent's website, we just, this is such a major battle for us because we're not going to give in. I think last time we were here, you said, why not just do it? Why not bake the cake? Why not just put them back in? Because our kids deserve better. Somebody has to fight, and we're just not going to give in. This is not something we're willing to just allow our kids to have to do this. I would rather close the library. There are lots of schools that don't have libraries.
But honestly, considering how horrible this material is, it's almost like facilitating child abuse. I'll be honest.
Agreed.
And I understand why you feel that way.
Agreed.
Why it makes me sick to read this on air. It feels like you're facilitating child abuse.
Well, and the hypocrisy of the organizations that are celebrating the ruling and then refusing to allow posts of people who put the quotes of the books and calling them pornographic. Hypocritical, how hypocrisy at its best. It's so frustrating.
And if I have time to talk a bit more about the media coverage on this issue. Yeah. So just to give the listeners and viewers a background of my career, I spent 20 years in the media. I was an anchor, a reporter for NBC, ABC, CW affiliates across the country. I started off as an intern and writer at 9 News locally. I went to school at Metro State, graduated, and then had this great career, most recently the host of Wake Up with CW in Las Vegas. So when I worked in journalism, and it seems like a long time ago, considering how the standards have changed, but it wasn't that long ago, you wouldn't air a story if you didn't get both sides. And the other day, I was explaining to a high school student what a pager was. I said, we had a pager back then. You'd clip it to your belt, and when my parents wanted to get a hold of me, they'd call this number. It would beep or vibrate. I'd call it back on a payphone. And then I had to explain what a payphone was. I feel like if I had the media in a room right now, I'd have to explain the same way to them how journalism is supposed to be. You're supposed to present both sides. You're supposed to be analytical and not be biased and not push an agenda. But you can see in these stories that's exactly what's happening. And it's extremely disappointing. And I did see this latest survey from Gallup about Americans' trust in the media.
Right, it's low.
Okay, so it has sunk to the lowest point in more than 5 decades. Just 31% of respondents in Gallup's latest survey on the topic said that they trust the mainstream media a great deal or a fair amount, while 36% said they don't trust the media at all. If that was a term paper and Dan was grading it, it would be an F minus.
Well, I mean, you guys you're fighting a major fight. We're happy to come alongside you. And in fact, we're getting text messages. People are donating to you right now. Rob in Tennessee, thank you so much. $100 to the Elizabeth School District. These guys right here, Dan Snowberger, Superintendent, Jeff Maher, Public Information Officer, Elizabeth School District, up against the ACLU that wants to force them to put pornographic material in these kids' libraries. They are standing strong and saying, not on our watch. That's child abuse. We are going to defend the rights of our parents, and we're going to protect our kids, and we're going to get back to what education is really all about. And it's not about these agendas being driven. I want you to go to elizabethschooldistrict.org, elizabethschooldistrict.org, right there at the top. You can donate and support to them. We'll continue. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. I got Dan Snowberger and Jeff Maher in studio. They're with the Elizabeth School District fighting against the ACLU, shockingly, to keep pornography out of kids' libraries. I don't even know, it has to be a fight. Goodness gracious. Let's go to the phone lines. Rod Littleton, good morning. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Good morning, gentlemen. You know, they're okay with having this pornographic literature in schools. The schools monitor what kids do online at school on their school-owned devices. Why not open that up and then let's put in Playboy and Penthouse Forum? It does the same thing. It gives kids a chance to go in secret and explore what they want to explore.
That's a really good point, Rod. I'll let Dan respond.
Rod, we're required to have a SIPA filter, Child Internet Protection Act filter on our internet. We could not email these quotes in our email system because of the content of these books. So the federal government requires we have a filter. We can't even send these because of that filter, but we are supposed to have these on the shelf. So exactly a perfect point. Thank you so much.
You bet, guys. Good luck. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Yeah, Rod, great call. Really appreciate it. I think parents get this. I think most people get this. This is not right for this agenda-driven pornography smut content to be in kids' schools. You guys aren't banning books. You're not saying that parents can't buy these books for their kids if, God forbid, I don't know why you would, but you want to buy this for your kid. It's not like you're banned from doing it. It's just saying this shouldn't be accessible in a kid's library. Incestual sexual relationships between a dad and a daughter and the graphic nature of it shouldn't be in a kid's library. This is a big battle they're going to face, and they need your help. I'm standing with them. Go to elizabethschooldistrict.org, elizabethschooldistrict.org right now. Donate. Help them fight for parents' rights and the protection of children in our state. You've been listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
It is 9 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Wednesday, March 26, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show. News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Monday night, I went to an anti-ICE rally outside of the ICE Deportation Center in Aurora, Colorado. Got to meet some very kind Antifa people who just follow me around and yell curse words at me the whole time because they all know who I am now. But I did get a few interviews in there. And a lot of the claims being made by folks right now in the anti-ICE movement is that innocent people are being drug up in these deportations, even to El Salvador prisons. Are they really Venezuelan gangbangers? We're going to talk with John Koufos, former gang attorney, about what he thinks Tom Homan and the folks are doing with regards to these deportations to this El Salvadorian prison. And is it good? We'll get into that. You're not going to want to miss this conversation. But now is time for Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
48 and sunny in Denver, expecting a high of 75 today. Going to be a beautiful day. The 7-10 5-day forecast is coming up. Our top story, we are dealing with sex trafficking, child porn, pedophilia, child abuse, and all the worst horrific crimes that you can think of in our state and this country. And we wonder why. One of the reasons could be leftist judges and sick people dancing with the devil. Last hour, Elizabeth School District officials on with Jeff and Billy after Superintendent Dan Snowberger and leaders in Elizabeth took books with sexually explicit material that aren't appropriate for kids off the shelves. And now the ACLU and a judge are trying to force them to put the books back on the shelves.
And it's funny because when we actually, these websites and these blogs that have celebrated this ruling, when we post quotes from those books, they immediately are flagged as pornography and taken down. So even these sites that are celebrating the judge's ruling that, this is great for democracy, great that, children are finally, their rights are restored, won't even allow these quotes from the books to be posted on their websites.
Wow. In my opinion, after hearing Jeff read the books on the air last hour, the ACLU and this judge are deranged, mentally ill, and have been overtaken by Satan, honestly. Thank you, Jesus, for taking care of the Elizabeth children and destroying this evil. It's just disgusting, horrific. Send money to the Elizabeth School District. Speaking of pedos, the FBI may be getting closer to exposing more in the Epstein case. Kyle Seraphin, FBI whistleblower, says that 14 terabytes of evidence are being investigated by agents across the country. He was on InfoWars.
I just listen to what people say, and then I go and see if folks can actually validate that. I've got friends that are working at headquarters. I got a couple of them at this point. There are friends of mine. It turns out when you become an FBI whistleblower, less and less people talk to you. They just don't want to get involved. But a few of them that are not scared, that are courageous and said they'd be happy to both lose their job and shut this agency down if it had to be done. They've gone out and proactively told me, it's like, look, we've broken servers. We've had so many people accessing them to do this work. The people that we're talking about here, they've reached out to me and said, yeah, we have all hands on deck. I meant to go do something because he was going to go meet one of my friends, wasn't able to do so. And he's like, look, dude, I got stuff going on. I can't because we have all hands on deck meetings talking about Epstein files. We are doing the redactions. We are doing the things that were said.
It needs to be exposed. Expose it all. The reporter, Jeff Goldberg from The Atlantic, who was on the group text on Signal with the U.S. military officials, somehow was on there. He smeared DJT for a decade, and Alex Jones said yesterday that Goldberg wanted to do a story on him 13 years ago. He flew to Austin, and then he said he didn't want to do a story. But then,
we want to know who you work for. And I'm like, what do you mean? I just studied politics in the world. And I have a popular show. He goes, well, the administration, others want to know if you're dangerous. They were trying to figure out who you work for. I knew what he was doing when it happened. I talked about it days after. I said, that guy's a Mossad or CIA, probably both. And now I know a lot more how this stuff works. The real spies are in it all. That's why you got CIA, Mossad, all of it with, with JFK. It's all just tentacles, heads of the Hydra.
PBS and NPR leaders are testifying before House DOJ subcommittee as they are being questioned about federal support for public broadcasting. The pair, along with their respective local stations, are funded through an over $500 million appropriation provided by Congress, along with corporate foundation and viewer support. As you know, this program viewer supported by, and a lot of us are tired of supporting it. And Republican Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene has accused both of bias. And I have this sound that we just got.
NPR and PBS have increasingly become radical left-wing echo chambers for a narrow audience of mostly wealthy, white, urban liberals and progressives.
Vice President Vance is meeting with fellow Marines at Marine Corps Base Quantico in Virginia. Vance is the first member of the U.S. Marine Corps to serve as vice president. The White House says he will tour the base, meet with Marines, and deliver remarks. The Nuggets play host to the Bucks tonight in the NBA, and the Avalanche over the Red Wings last night on the ice, 5-2 the final. 47 in Lone Tree, 46 in Brighton, 48 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue. Don't forget to donate to the Elizabeth School District. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Beautiful. Early spring weather for Denver. Enjoy. We'll be low to mid-70s and sunny today. Lower 40s tonight. Sunny. Well into the 70s on Thursday. Lows at night 40s. Friday still making the 70s. Now Friday will bring a few afternoon showers and isolated thunderstorms. A better chance of showers, of rain, and thunder Saturday than a chance of rain and snow Saturday night, Sunday, and much colder. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. As I mentioned on Monday, I went to a anti-ICE rally. And it was in defense of Jeanette Vizquera, who's a grandma that's being deported. That's how the progressive left is covering her. This grandma, this innocent grandma. Well, she'd been multiple deportation orders, initially under Obama, flees to Mexico, comes back. She gets arrested for Social Security crimes. All that stuff is kind of not covered. But I talked to folks there, and I put up a video. If you go to x.com/Jeff Hunt, you can watch the video there on people's perspective. They really hate ICE, and they're making claims out there that some of the migrants that are being deported, particularly to El Salvador prisons, are innocent. Well, Tom Homan's saying, no, they're gang members. Well, to provide some commentary and insight on this is John Koufos, former gang attorney. John, thanks so much for taking time to join the Jeff and Bill Show this morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Good to be with you. Good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
So you're watching all this happen, and I know you've worked with incarcerated individuals before. You're looking at the deportations that Tom Homan's instigating. Give us your thoughts.
So I think that the authority for the White House and for the administration to do this, to me, it seems pretty clear, right? I mean, just purely people aren't mapping fully from the designation of the cartels as foreign terrorist organizations to the deportations where we are today. So when the cartels were designated as foreign terrorist organizations, their status then changes, right? These aren't just regular criminal gangs like the mafia or something like that. These are folks who are presumptively presumptively engaged in terrorist activities. Once you're presumptively engaged in terrorist activities by the organization you are affiliated with, your deportation runs on a different schedule, and where you can be placed runs on a different schedule. And we also have to remember that some of the folks that were deported, their country of origin did not want to take them back. And I think the White House was very clear: if your country of origin will not take you back, you will go where we send you. So I think that the risk here, and there is always some risk, but again, we haven't seen any evidence that these deportations were done improperly. At least I haven't seen. There's a question of what is the determination of whether or not you have gang membership, right? We don't have a lot of information on that. I don't think we're going to get a lot of information on that. And for national security reasons, it may be best that we don't have a lot of information on that. I just don't know.
We're talking with John Koufos. He's a former gang attorney who's worked with several presidential administrations, including President Trump's, as a criminal reform leader. So I'm guessing from your background, John, that you're not in the kick them all out type of category, make them pay. You respect the human rights and dignity of people that are been incarcerated. So I'm guessing that's your background. You're looking at what's happening. Does anything Trump do at this point give you pause with regards to these deportations?
No, and listen, I say that as someone who has worked on these issues for years with President Trump on the First Step Act. I was at the event with the president and the attorney general a week and a half ago at the Department of Justice. I think that strong public safety measures, particularly in this immigration space, actually advance the work we're doing in criminal justice reform. Because what happens is when you have folks who aren't supposed to be here in the first place and then committing crimes, or maybe committed crimes where they were from and were let in, committing more crimes in America, it actually makes our job trying to do public safety focused criminal justice reform that much harder. So I have no problem with removing people who are members of terrorist organizations, members of gangs who have committed heinous crimes and who are involved in drug trafficking and other things. To be honest, I think that's smart policy. I also think that the particular time we're in, I think particularly in your state, right, where I believe like whole apartment complexes were taken over, right? This is not four guys sitting on the corner in The Wire, in the TV show The Wire, right, trying to sell a little bit of drugs in the hood, right? This is a highly sophisticated organization. If you upset them, it's very clear they cut your hands, they cut your fingers off, they cut your hands off, they'll kill you, they'll kill your family. These are very, very vicious gangs. The question I have, and I think is being answered by the administration appropriately, is what are the measures to make sure that you're deporting people who are doing this to people who are actually gang members? So the truth of the matter is, there's no restriction on deporting them anyway for being here illegally. The only issue would be you would go to your ICE detention center prior to deportation, so you'd be incarcerated there, or you get sent on a plane out of here. I'm pretty sure Tom Homan isn't going to be using precious seats on a plane out of the country for people that he doesn't believe are among the most dangerous in our country.
Talking with John Koufos, a former gang attorney who's worked with several presidential administrations, including President Trump's, as a criminal reform leader. John, I went down to an anti-ICE rally on Monday. I like to go where progressives are hosting protests. In Colorado, there's a protest every day. Right now, we've had teachers' union protests. We had Bernie Sanders and AOC here on Friday. And I just like to interview people and ask them about their perspectives. My videos, I got a new one up last night on this one, tend to go pretty viral. Just letting them talk. People like to see that. But, John, I heard stories. I heard people talking about the incarceration of illegal immigrants in ICE, abuse within ICE detention facilities, the idea of putting them in solitary confinement for long periods of time, of illegal immigrants being abused by attorneys in the sense of collecting fees from these immigrant families, then not providing services. Are you hearing these stories? Are you hearing abuse within the immigrant community, whether it's coming from ICE itself or even attorneys that provide services to illegal immigrants?
So I haven't heard it from ICE itself, but I think we all have to level set here for a second. Every prison and jail in America runs the risk of having abuse, right? This is not the Hilton, and it's not intended to be the Hilton, right? So, if there's fights in an immigration detention facility, if you don't like the food, if you don't like the conditions, but the conditions are constitutional, then that's no different than the county jail in Denver, the state prison system in Colorado, the state prison system in New Jersey, where I'm from originally, or anywhere else, right? So we should remember that, right? That's the first piece of this. This is a detention facility. And actually, to be honest, the federal detention facilities have much higher standards than many of the states. So the conditions are probably better in the ICE detention center and generally are in federal places than they are in the states as a threshold matter. With respect to predatory attorneys, well, there are predators on illegal immigrants and people here on status looking to be here legally and do the right thing that get preyed upon by any number of sources. The remedy to that is not to cease deportations or to cease immigration action. The remedy for that is for your state bar to crack down on those people and disbar them, right? I mean, that's the remedy. But any population navigating a new environment is going to be subject to unsavory characters wherever they may exist. And there's no shortage of them, both in payday loan lenders and attorneys and bail bondsmen, immigration bondsmen, et cetera, right? That's the space. So I haven't heard any of those things, but the remedy is not to cease deportations or to stop our foot on the gas for public safety.
We're talking with John Koufos, a storied career as a former gang attorney and also an advisor to many presidents, including President Trump. John, it seemed to be a pivot that took place. It's been lost in the news around Signal. And this has to do with Tulsi Gabbard and the report that came out about major threats to this country, and they were including fentanyl and drugs as a top threat now to the United States as a national security threat. So drugs are no longer just put in the kind of public health problem category. They're put now in the national security category. Is that part of the administration's thinking on getting these illegal immigrants out, that we are now considering the drug abuse that's taking place, the overdoses, the fentanyl, as a form of terrorism, as an act against the national security interests of this country? Ergo, if you're an illegal immigrant involved in the drug trafficking schemes, we can now get you out quicker.
That's accurate, yes. So that is true. Again, the designation of the cartels as foreign terrorist organizations expedite that process. But remember, even if you're a banker laundering money for these people, you could now be charged with material support of terrorism, right? Which could send you to ADX in Colorado and Florence by you to sit there with the Boston Marathon bomber and those types of folks and Ted Kaczynski. So I think that's a really important thing. Now, the drug abuse issues are still predominantly public health issues that I think people with addiction issues are different than the traffickers. But for many, many years, people have known that the fentanyl, heroin, cocaine are being used to fund, more than just lavish lifestyles, right? They're being used to fund arms, being used to fund, government action or terrorist action in other countries. I recently published an article in the Daily Signal about supporting the whole Fentanyl Act, which the Attorney General is behind, and this was a big part of that event with the President and AG Bondi a few weeks ago that I was at. And I was one of the only criminal justice advocates so far to really come out for it, because what happens is right now in the law, there is a loophole that if I were still practicing, I would drive a Mack truck through, is that fentanyl itself is subject to strict penalties, but fentanyl analogs, which have the same net effect or can be combined to make even worse substances, do not. So all the cartels do is they put all these fentanyl analogs together and traffic them, recognizing when they get hit for it and jammed up, the penalty is far less. So the whole Fentanyl Act, which is now going through Congress, and hopefully will get to President Trump's desk, should close those loopholes and make the penalties much more serious. And by extension, the penalties for the death arising from that be able to be linked together, say, in some sort of RICO situation in appropriate cases.
Talking with John Koufos, former gang attorney who's worked with several presidential administrations. I saw a statistic from DEA that shows that fentanyl deaths are starting to go down, and it seems, shockingly, to correlate with higher border security. I don't know. It seems, but
right. I mean,
it seems like it's
that's
working.
obvious, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. It's obvious to anybody, right? And I think that the same with just border crossings that are an all-time low, right? I mean, people are being offered the opportunity to self-deport before getting, rounded up. Because what happens is, remember, just putting the fentanyl thing aside for a second, if you're in a community like where they took over your apartment complex and there's 100 people, I'm going to use round numbers, there's 100 people there and 100 people on a legal status and 75 are the people that we're most afraid of. Well, when ICE goes in there to get those 75, they inquire to the other 25, realize that those people may or may not be committing crimes, may or may not be in a gang, but they are here under a legal status. So these people collaterally then get pulled into the ICE system, not sent to El Salvador, but get sent to the local detention center, right? So the idea, there's a real interest for communities like yours in Colorado to actually cooperate with ICE if you wanted to be, if you wanted to protect the people here who might be here illegally but are causing no trouble, right? But the problem is, it's the old thing that if, President Trump said there was a cure for cancer, everybody else would ask to have cancer, right? There's like this pushback over anything the administration does, and the collateral damage is, unfortunately, those people who are here illegally but causing no trouble. And I think real progressives should be concerned about that.
I agree with you. John Koufos, former gang attorney, worked with several presidential administrations. I want to pivot here because I was intrigued by your background with regards to criminal reform. I know conservative Christians, like I'm one of them, harken back to Chuck Colson and the work he did with prison fellowship and making sure that there's opportunities for redemption and change and that type of thing. That was in many ways led by conservative Christians. But with a lot of the George Soros DAs and the weakening of punishing criminals, I think conservatives are looking at the crime we're facing in communities, particularly like Denver, Aurora. We face real challenges with that and go, we got to get a lot tougher on crime. As you look at Trump's administration coming in here with the mandate to get tougher on crime, knowing that there's a great conservative Christian history around the treatment of prisoners and treating them well so that there can be redemption there and change. Give me a sense of how you're looking at the next 4 years.
Yeah, so great question. And a threshold statistic for everybody is a national stat that 95 to 96% of everybody who's sitting in a jail cell right now is coming out, right? That's a fact, right? That's an absolute fact. So what we have to decide as a society is how we want them to come out, right? And I think we all want them coming out, well, at minimum, to not commit any more crimes, and at maximum to reunify, create families, become pillars of their own communities, et cetera, right? I think that during the first Trump administration, well, I shouldn't say I think, I know that during the first administration, we saw the best criminal justice reform that has ever been done by a president ever in America. Trump reversed so much of the crack cocaine sentencing disparity, which, completely crippled disproportionately black communities in this country. He passed the First Step Act, compassionate release, second chance hiring to make sure people with records had a chance to get jobs. And Trump was able to do this, and the Trump effect of that was that states you wouldn't necessarily think would also be interested in this, think of Mississippi, the Carolinas, now we're all passing similar laws themselves. Then when President Biden took over, we sort of lost all that, right? And it was interesting because Biden was the architect of the crack cocaine sentencing disparity. But we didn't have much going on during that period of time. We did a couple things here or there. So I think we're going to see actually great things going on. I think that the Trump administration is soon going to pick a director of prisons, I'm sure, the Federal Bureau of Prisons. I know the Attorney General is working very, very diligently. She said in her Senate confirmation hearing that executing President Trump's First Step Act to make sure people come back better than they went in is one of her top priorities. And I think it should be from a public safety perspective. So I'm expecting some really good things. And I think also by removing people who are obviously committing crimes that shouldn't be here, which is happening on the immigration side, that is going to provide both the political space and the operational space to do things for folks, say, in the Colorado Department of Corrections in your state or coming out of those county jails, to do better programming for them, which will make your communities more prosperous.
We're talking with John Koufos. Now, John, help me square a circle here. So in Colorado, for instance, voters were so frustrated with these kind of George Soros district attorneys that were letting people out early, no requirement that they even be in prison, no cash bails, all that stuff, just kind of letting them out, that voters passed a ballot initiative that said, well, if you get sentenced, you got to at least serve 50% of your sentence. So conservatives frustrated with weak on crime district attorneys, how should they look at criminal justice reform, particularly led maybe by the Trump administration?
Sure. So sticking with the bail situation, the bail situation is interesting. So 94 federal districts around the country and like a handful of states use a risk-based bail system in lieu of cash, right? So the problem is too often jurisdictions get rid of cash bail and they have nothing else. That's what happened in New York City. So New York City abolishes cash bail, but then doesn't have risk-based bail. What I mean by risk-based bail is the ability for a judge to assess dangerousness and detain, right? So in New Jersey, use New Jersey, my home state. If you're deemed a risk or you have a significant record, you're simply detained. You can't have bail. And on the other end, if you're not, you're released with conditions. And New Jersey's crime rate has not gone up like the rest of the country's had. New Jersey's court appearance rate is in the high 90s. But the problem is people didn't do what New Jersey or the feds did. They just said, you know what, to hell with it. We'll just get rid of cash bail because we consider it a problem. That is where you create all these public safety problems, right? With respect to the sentencing reform, so most states do have some form of parole, right? So in some states, it's a third to 50% before you're eligible for parole. I think what they did in Colorado is similar to what happened in Illinois, if I recall reading correctly, where you could just max out at 50%. I'm not sure that's the most productive way to do things. When you have a robust parole system, your parole board, hopefully you can earn your way out, say, after that third or 50%, and then there's certain enumerated offenses where there's no parole, right, at all. So I think that has been proven to be best for public safety nationally. But the extremes of, too soft, or in some states, you do 85 to 90% of your time automatically, also do not, the stats don't bear out for public safety on either of those extremes.
We're talking with John Koufos, former gang attorney. He's worked for several presidential administrations. Originally, a conversation around some of that critique you might be hearing of the fact that Tom Homan and those deporting illegal immigrants, those in gangs, may not all be actual gang members. Well, John saying from his perspective, yeah, it's probably true that they are gang members, and Tom Homan's doing the right work. John Koufos, thanks so much for taking time to join us on the Jeff and Bill Show. How can people connect with you if they wanted to follow you on X or Facebook?
Yeah, thanks so much. You can follow JGKOUFOS. That's me on Twitter or X. And my website is Cottage4, like it's spelled out, COTTAGEFOUR.com. Shoot me a note through there. I'll get right back to anybody who wants to talk. Thank you so much for having me and all you do out there.
John, great conversation. A lot of good text messages here. I appreciate your time. All right, we'll continue. If you have questions or if you want to talk about what John was just talking about, give us a call, 303-696-1971. I get the sense that John's no hard right-winger. He's not out there willing to agree with everything Trump does, but what you saw there was his analysis of what Tom Homan's doing with regards to these Venezuelan gang members is that, yeah, they're likely all gang members and that the country has done its due diligence to get them out of here. So do you agree with that? 303-696-1971 or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. Let me tell you why you need to call Mitch Floria and the Art of Granite to put together the perfect kitchen or bathroom remodel for you. First of all, quality craftsmanship. Mitch is such an expert and craftsman that he can turn granite, quartz, marble, or other materials into a true work of art right in your home. Number 2, superior service. From single residential installations to large-scale projects, Mitch and his team's attention to details unmatched. They will listen to you and get you what you need. Number 3, great value. Mitch provides granite from his own warehouse in Denver West at wholesale prices with no markup, so you can get the most for your budget. Listen to this. All you have to do, mention KNUS and receive a bathroom countertop free when you purchase your fantastic new kitchen countertops. You can also get a kitchen or bathroom sink free when you purchase any countertop package. All you have to do, mention KNUS. So schedule a consultation with Mitch and visit his beautiful showroom in Denver West, or call Mitch at 303-386-5919. That's 303-386-5919. Or you can visit his website at theartofgranite.com to start dreaming about your new countertops. That's theartofgranite.com. We'll continue with the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. What a legend. And I love it when he swings by to say hi to us. We got Peter Boyles. He's going to give us an update on what he's talking about this weekend. His show from 9 to 1, 710 KNUS on Saturdays. The legendary Peter Boyles.
Hey, that was a good, coming in, that hour that you did on reading and Billy and I were talking about, that was great radio.
Yeah, it was.
Well, and thank you to Kelly. We ran it by Kelly to make sure that they were okay, because that's how dangerous stuff is. I mean, we could lose I could lose my job. We could lose our license by reading the stuff they want in a school library.
Yeah, and if we're going to lose our job, it's going to be my fault.
No, it's intent. And
yeah,
Billy and I were talking. It's not that you can't say to your kid, you can't read that because that's forbidden fruit. It's like we grew up on the Allegheny River, and in the summertime, my mom would say, "Don't go near the river." Yeah. I was born and raised in the Briar Patch, that kind of thing. And so forbidden fruit. It's Old Testament, and somebody would say, "You can't read that," and I was telling Billy, we were talking about it, the Catholic Church put out a list of banned books. I went and got every one of them. If there's Lady Chatterley's Lover.
And look, what Elizabeth School District's saying is, like, if the parents want to buy this stuff, we're not telling them they can't even bring it to the school. In fact, you want to buy it for your kid and he wants to bring it to the school. But why do we got to have stuff on a incestuous sexual relationship detailing sex acts between a father and a daughter in the kids' library? Why do we got to carry that stuff?
Well, I have an answer for that, but why do you think they chose those books? I can't hear Billy, but why would they have done that?
Well, I'll say it, and then you go ahead and get your headphones on so we can get Billy in here too. Analysis that I'm hearing from attorneys on this is that this was agenda-driven. It came in at the level of the book sourcers, so they were sending this into the schools in bulk. The librarians didn't really pay attention, weren't really aware that these were coming in. Then once you get them in, you try to remove them, then it becomes this big ACLU battle. But that was why. Can you hear good now? Okay.
I can hear.
Bill, why do you think these books ended up there in the first place?
I think they ended up there because the people that are curating the library didn't look. That's the core of it, is that these things should be scanned and approved beforehand, even if they just show up bulk. I mean, if all we need to do is show up at the school libraries with bulk books, I have a few ideas. I'm not saying they're good ideas. I'm just saying I got a few ideas.
Well, isn't it true that one or two states control most of that? Texas and California control textbooks.
Yeah.
That if it flies there, it flies here.
Yeah, because of size of market.
Yeah, it's like EVs. It's like when California can make the EV mandate, well, then it affects everybody else, basically.
Precisely. But I think there's something, again, far nefarious about this, that selecting something like that has no, I mean, and I love what you just said, you want to read it at home, you want to buy the book for your kid, knock yourself out. But it doesn't belong in general population.
Yeah.
So
I would agree on that, too. And I think the school district should be allowed to make their own choice, because the choice that is made inside of a Boulder school district is different than the choice that is going to be made in the Sterling school district, which is different than Elizabeth, which is also going to be vastly different than the books you're probably going to find in somewhere like Eads or Brighton or even Fort Morgan. They're going to be vastly different because of the populations.
I told my story about, I was telling Jeff about it, that the book was Away All Boats, 4th grade class, William McKinley School, Verona Hilltop, Mrs. Traeger. And we had reading hour, and I brought the book from the library. I was always reading this World War II stuff. Now I'm in the 4th grade. And Mrs. Traeger said, if there's a word you don't understand, put your hand up. And it was some guy was the pimp of the outfit. My hand was in the air. My mother was in the school the next day.
Now, Pete, you have this great reputation as a reader. My dad used to talk about it all the time, about your commitment to books, and you're going to be talking about it this Saturday. But I gotta ask you, if you were born today with all the technology, you think you'd be as good a reader?
Wow. Reading is a gift. It's like, I think it's like being able to throw the curve. You're just kind of born with it. I want to believe I would, but you're still reading like my grandson reads, but he reads on a tablet. Books are important. And people ban them for a reason, but no, I don't know. Oftentimes, my summers were spent. My mom would take us to the library. We'd get 5 or 6 books for 2 weeks, and that's what we did. I mean, other kids I hear, we went to space camp, and somebody said, "Where'd you go on vacation?" I said, "Grandma's." We went to Grandma's.
Yes. And there's something tactile about holding the book that I can't make the transition into reading long form on a tablet or anything else. I can consume news through a phone or a computer screen, but there's no way I am going to be reading a multi-chapter book electronically. It doesn't create the same connection. I don't find the same joy out of it, and I don't find the same intellectual exercise out of it as something that is tactile.
I tell you what I'm reading now, and they're both great. This book, I was just telling Billy, it's called Chaos, written by a guy by the name of Tom O'Neill. I've been told about this book, and finally I got a copy of it, about Charlie Manson, his connections to the CIA.
Really?
For real. This book is so
That's crazy.
unbelievable.
What?
And he clashes with Vincent Bugliosi. Bugliosi threatens to sue him. You know, Charlie Manson was 6 months older than Bugliosi when he prosecuted him.
Jeez.
And what they did is unbelievable, and how they mind controlled. And remember, there's a thing called MK Ultra, and they did that to Whitey Bulger. Whitey Bulger got Whitey went to Atlanta.
The mob guy, right?
The Irish mob.
Yeah.
And Whitey, who knows how many acid trips Whitey took when they put him in Atlanta, because you got time off. And then the CIA dropped acid on people that didn't know they were having acid dropped on them. And I'm only as far as the book, in the book, as Bugliosi has threatened to sue O'Neill if he publishes. And there's a book called Reds about the American Communist Party. That's very, very good.
So joining us in studio, Pete Boyles, his show 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Saturdays. Pete, you're in to record your promos and coming by.
So you guys, I love you guys.
Let's have a conversation about what you're going to talk about on Saturday.
I'm going to open the show. We've been supporting Kelly Young. Her husband was murdered by the illegal that was working for the mayor at the time. And they've asked us to wait until April to renew our fight for them. But it's perfect because I have 2 people I know and respect are going to be down in Pueblo. I think that we may be the first place to announce the new party chair live.
I think you will be. That's exactly right. That's this Saturday morning.
Yeah. So we're going to open there with somebody you guys all know, Sheriff Reams. We'll open with Sheriff Reams. He'll be there. And then 2 hours. And I'm showing you the book, Steve McQueen, and the life and legend of a Hollywood icon who would have been 95 years old Tuesday, I think, was his birthday. Jeez. I'm a huge Steve McQueen fan, and your dad and I would do that. Do you guys have any sense at all of Steve McQueen?
You know what I have a sense of was the was it Cars that got into Steve? Lightning McQueen was kind of named after Steve McQueen, the animation Cars.
Yeah.
But outside of that, not really.
Billy?
Before me.
The Steve McQueen is the entire reason that somewhere in middle school, it's got to be in middle school based on the era. I'm trying to think about where I was in my life. Steve McQueen is the entire reason in my middle school life that I went and dug through my closet and found the baseball glove that was gifted to me several years before.
In the cooler.
Because of, what he did in the cooler.
The cooler
the idea of the Great Escape. After seeing that and the number of hours I spent sitting and bouncing a ball off the wall so I could do it just like Steve McQueen did over and over and over. It's the only reason I ever picked up that baseball glove.
Well, he had a terrible childhood, absolutely terrible childhood. And he died at 50. And you guys are also too young to remember a product called Laetrile. It was the miracle cancer cure, but it was only in Mexico. And
that seemed legit.
Yeah, and he was he started believing alternative medicine. By the way, he found Christianity at the end of his life, and he died in Mexico. And but he was 50. But he packed a lot into 50 years.
Oh, yeah.
And I think The Great Escape, all those films that he made, he certainly, The Getaway. I mean, he's Steve McQueen. And they bought the hangar. One of my idols is a guy named Jeff Decker. And Harley Davidson has 2 in-house artists. One is David Yule, who's probably listening to your show this morning, and the other was Jeff Decker, and Decker lives in Utah. And Decker's dad desert raced with Steve McQueen. He was a wrench. And they took him, and this is the stuff that really isn't in the book, and Marshall Terrell's a great biographer, but Decker's father took him up to the hangar. And everything happened at that hangar, because everything comes out of the West Coast, as we know. But the motorcycle stuff, and Ed Roth was there, and Sonny Barger was there. And so, anyhow, Steve McQueen and the Pueblo get-together.
Yeah, it's going to be a great show on Saturday.
That's The Great Escape.
Oh, yes.
Who do you pick?
At least for Dave Williams, that's The Great Escape. He's getting out of there, right?
Who do you pick?
Oh boy, this is really hard for me. I think there's a natural desire for Britta Horn. I think they want to change in the Republican Party.
Yeah.
But when you get in that room, those are the hardcore. Those are the deeply committed. So it could go Darcy. Go ahead.
Yep.
Yeah,
Billy?
that's the thing, is because of the hardcore that chose Dave last time, it's hard for me to not see that same group choose
They're
Darcy.
still there.
Just
Yeah.
because. But if I had to give any advice, and of course the Colorado GOP shouldn't listen to me at all, consider the choices. Consider the choices, because which one strategically is going to get you to where you want to be, and then choose accordingly.
Well,
all right. I mean, Pete, we've got to get up here to a break.
Thank
Peter
you for
Boyles,
bringing me in.
9 a.m. to
thank
1
you.
p.m. Saturday. By the way, brother, you're going to be breaking the news on who won the Colorado Republican Party chairmanship. It's going to be huge.
I said Darcy, and a person I won't mention said, "How do you know?" I said, "Because Dave gets to count the votes." that would be funny. Any other place, that would be funny. Right?
All right. You're listening to Jeff and Bill.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Wow, Bill, what a show we had today discussing the signal controversies. By the way, all those intelligence chiefs are now in front of the House Intelligence Committee. Yesterday was Senate, today's House, and Jason Crow was grilling him. We're going to have to get that audio. I want to see what Crow has to say about all this. So
we're going to see what he said.
Tomorrow we'll cover that. We also talked with Dan Snowberger and Jeff Maher with the Elizabeth School District on the big battle they're facing with the ACLU. That was a wild segment. Don't miss that. We talked with John Koufos and Pete Boyles as well. All of this at 710knus.com. Download the podcast there. We'll be back tomorrow. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's Talk Later News Talk 710 KNUS.